Welcome back to Interdimensional. Support the author Agent DXD by Antidethy for this exciting story of what if Issei's foundation was destroyed and rebuilt. Prologue. The Unbeginning. Kenzo Ozawa, age 78, former infantry private, born on September 20, 1927. He watched with a smile as the young boy with the brown puff of hair on his head skipped happily back to his house next street, a magazine in hand. His magazine. With a decrepit groan he got off the bench and started walking home, clutching his cane with newly rejuvenated vigor. He watched as the boy's figure disappeared. Kids these days are so feisty, cuckoo, his parents will probably be mad. Kenzo said. It was an odd thing. He knew his time was up. He could feel it in his bones, the exhausted bundle of muscles in his chest, a heart of 78, pumping away its last bits of vitality. His children cut contact with him, and he didn't even know who his grandchildren were. His siblings had moved to Kyoto, or America, or God knows where on the planet to seek out their own proverbial apotheosis. Only he had come back to the little swampy town that nurtured them as tadpoles. But the town was now almost a city, metropolitan and concrete. And his wife had died before their kids could make it to adulthood, and old Kenzo Ozawa would die alone. But strangely, he was happy. It was as if fate smiled upon him one last time, the opportunity to share his love for women's badungas. The juicy fat blobs of flesh and milk, the source of all life. The underrated charm of the Az, the golden classic, the mountainous contour of the GS and up, but above all those, the doubled landing perfection. Hee. Kenzo chuckled mischievously, as he almost skipped a step in excitement. Being the known town's pervert, most people knew to steer clear of him. That or they just called him a molester and walked away. But not this boy, this young man called Issei, son of the hired pair living in the working-class neighborhood. He had the same shining eyes as Kenzo himself when he first laid eyes on the supermodel on the front cover of his weekly Playboy piece. He also gave him some of the lunch his mother had so neatly packed in a box. It wasn't hard to get an hour-long intense discussion about the purity of Big Tata's going. Kenzo saw the potential in him of an internationally infamous pervert. But most of all, he saw himself, and he didn't want the boy to repress himself like he had done in the military. He should let his wings of perviness flop free. It was strange. He felt happy to die today. For the first time, he could indulge in his one obsession and even passed on his teachings. Something he had failed to do with his own little ones. Little punk better keep that mag close, new editions are getting expansive. Pho! He spat on ground and chuckled. He might hoard him for some spare change if they saw each other again. Kenzo was a perv first, a swindler second, and a teacher last. Ah, who am I kidding? He'll ask me about JS and I'll forget all about the yen. Kenzo thought wistfully and quickened a step, eager to dig into his old classics from 1987. And that was the origin of Issei Hayate's harem king dream. The thing that shaped his life enjoying IES, or at least it should have been in this forlorn, mundane iteration too. U Mongolian Tugrik Korean 1 EV O Mongolian Tugrik Cuban Peso Nigerian Ira Ukrainian Hryvnia Mongolian Tugrik Ukrainian Hryvnia Mongolian Tugrik Nigerian Ira D Ukrainian Hryvnia O Franc Mongolian Tugrik Korean 1 Thailand Baht Laotian Kip Mongolian Tugrik L Nigerian Ira D Sada Ukrainian Hryvnia Nigerian Ira V Ukrainian Hryvnia L Nigerian Ira Paraguayan Guarani L Nigerian Ira. Class Beta 9 Spatial Temporal Shift on the Kurenai Scale, 20,000 Macro Quantum Rotations, 30, 4100,000. A woman's voice rang out through a cacophony of voices in the office, disbelief becoming more pronounced as the nanoseconds flew by. Her breath hitched as an ear-piercing beep was emitted from the super-advanced technological compartments she was working with. The panic in the office grew tenfold. Oh no! It's over! Initiate the reverse genesis protocols right now. There's nothing more to be done. The woman shot from her desk and ran through the infinite dimensional mirror door that connected her office to her superior's headquarters. Anyone else would be torn from the bowel-like movement of the infinite dimensional tunnel, but thankfully her central axis bracelet let her travel through it like a waterslide. The transportation phase took both hundreds of lifetimes and only 4 seconds to complete. Immediately upon entering, The woman's eyes were filled with a scenery of technological and astrophysical progress that even the greatest minds of 21st century humanity couldn't begin to imagine. For her, a measly low-rank manager in the Interdimensional Guardian organization, it was like the visage of a biblically accurate angel. And at the eye of the visual storm was a little girl, no older than 12, who shifted compressed black holes and quanta keys around the spacious room with her mind alone, constructing entire mock-ups of DXD cosmologies in mere flashes. She got on one knee and bowed her head, clutching the bioelectronic tablet near her chest. Her palms were almost sweaty with anxiety. Lady Akane, I'm here to report. The girl stopped and dispersed all her projects into nothing with a drawn-out sigh. She turned her head to the side, letting the woman clearly see her face. Bright blue eyes behind a pair of red half-framed glasses and creamy skin outlined by a hindcut of deep lavender hair. You didn't need to yell, Patricia, I already knew you were coming. Her lady spoke in a voice of professional boredom. The woman Patricia shuddered slightly as she felt the crystalline irises of Lady Akane pierce through her entire being, an intellectual perception only matched by a scant few. So, what is it? Akane asked, flinging a stasis-locked Big Bang to the side and taking a casual stride toward her employee. Your spinal posture is slightly off by 0.3 millimeters and your sweat glands are fired up like a barbecue. An incursion from the lower quadrant in universe? Patricia's mouth went agape for a second. As always, her superior's transcendent perceptiveness never ceased to amaze her, even after a year of working under her. It was like a higher dimensional being staring at a piece of paper. Nothing could escape her. Wise, however, the situation went way out of our control this time. We've lost all contact with the timeline. Our last reported signal was a break in the dimensional barrier. Apologies, Lady AK. The girl put up her hand to cut her off. Don't. You do all you can. What was the quantum reality break impact measured at? 12 on the X scale? No, it was. Patricia swallowed her spit as she uttered the next words. 24. Patricia saw her superior visibly freeze, and a tiny twinge of nervousness ran across her face before it was vanquished. A pit opened in her stomach. Lady Akane was the most composed, nonchalant being she had ever seen. For her to be shook meant disasters of boundless proportion were on the horizon. Give me the databank, Akane beckoned, gesturing for the bio-tablet. Patricia jumped slightly, snapping out of her stupor, and with shaking hands handed the tablet over to her boss. She watched as those blue analytical eyes glimmered with several waves of emotion as they took in all the data. Finally, the girl closed her eyes, sighed, and steeled her gaze. This is going to be a major hole. Akane mumbled, the crude language surprising Patricia, and waved her hand, materializing a semi-translucent quanta table. I need to report this to my mothers. In the meantime, Patricia. Yes, Lady Akane? Go back in your office and mitigate the situation there. Send in a few scouts to analyze the situation from a closer view. Akane ordered as she sat on the table, initiating dozens of systems with quick precision. Beeps and notification alarms began firing off as she navigated through the ocean of databases and servers their organization relied on. She paused briefly and looked toward Patricia. Also, please make sure nobody tries to be a hero and invade the timeline. If the situation unravels even more due to my own agent's incompetence, Mamaran will put me in a world of literal fecal matter. Tu will see it done, Lady Akane. Patricia responded, bowing deeply. Akane smiled slightly at her attentive subordinate. Thanks, you're a gift. Now shoo, girl, I'll be busy, she said, motioning for her to hurry up and get her behind back to the office. Bowing one last time and collecting herself, Patricia ran back through the infinite dimensional mirror door. I could really use Auntie Atego's hot chocolate foxfire coffee right now, Akane sighed, knowing full well days of unending logistics work was awaiting her. Kenzo Ozawa's heart stopped. He clutched his chest, his fingers sinking into the creased red woodcutter shirt he wore often as if trying to grasp any life in there. His eyes suddenly rolled to the back of his head in a grotesque unnatural movement, and his body began contorting. Idly, the last thing he saw before his consciousness was drowned out was the sky, colored red-purple and cracked in the middle as a comet tore its way through the fabric of reality. The world spun and folded inwards, historical events replaying like a duct tape, listing the life of the perverted old boba addict as it ran from beginning to its end from nowhere. A cut appeared. Then another, and another. And the tape of his life was cracked, broken to pieces. In the deep silence of non-existence, the film was restarted, new footage appearing every attosecond, nearly identical to the original. Yet, with every passing second of the scenes, deep alterations were made. Paths that Kenzo would have never chosen in 2 lifetimes. His birth. A humble household holding a family of 10 inside. His formative years. Running around Old Ko Town, bustling with farmers and goods traders. Reaching the dilapidated Aminominaki shrine and proclaiming himself victor in a game of hide and seek. His adolescence. Rejecting his first high school fling and several offers to mixed bath parties to focus on his studies instead. Becoming an academic scholar from an early age. His early adulthood. Entering the military, fighting the Americans and receiving a Medal of Honor from a senior officer. Accepting an invitation into a newly budding American intelligence network. His midlife. Climbing the socio-political ladder. Advancing financially. Creating a family, both of his own and adopted children. Navigating operations within CIA headquarters. MKUltra. Chaos. Finally, his last years. Disbarment from the CIA. Market collapses. Financial declines. Wife dies. Children cut ties. Crisis and depression are ever looming. A failing lung and heart. A lonely, sad life. And then, a fateful meeting. Bye. See ya next time, Hayada. Let's meet again near Sudo's place. Nah, I'd rather go to Shin's. Yeah, 'cause you like his hot sis, poop face. Shut up. I just haven't seen Shin. Even though they had said their goodbyes, the group of small hooligans continued to argue and throw jabs at one another for several minutes before finally truly separating. Issei grabbed his football and looked at his watch, gasping in horror. It showed 2018. Oh no! Mom's gonna kill me! Issei shuddered, imagining the fiery-eyed glare of his mother, and hurried into a sprint. In his hurry, he failed to see a protrusion in the pavement and tripped, falling with a hard thud and letting go of the ball. Ow! He winced as he got up. He felt a sting in his left knee and saw that he had scrapped it. The blood trickling down his leg caused him to hyperventilate and tear up, but when he saw his ball was missing, the ball was the last thing on his mind. Oh no, Dad just bought it last week. The young boy looked around haphazardly. You'd have to tell him someone stole it then, a voice said. It sounded coarse but also gentle, like that butler in that Batman show he would watch with his friend Shin. Issei saw the source of it. An old man, dressed in a smart fashioned trench coat. The gloves, fedora and glasses made him look like those old spy mentors in his Nintendo games. He was reading some kind of book. The thing that caught the boy's eye, however, was his ball, in the clutches of the man's right hand. Hey, give it back! Issei exclaimed as he charged at the man. He tried to jump and grab the ball, but the old man merely chuckled, moving his hand away. Grr, give it back! Issei roared, putting all his 8-year-old toddler energy into flailing his arms. To no avail, as the man simply shifted his hand out of reach. At times, it seemed almost undetectable by the human eye. Issei only stopped to catch his breath, his hands grasping his knees as he struggled to even stand. The man smiled innocently at him and taunted him with the ball, putting it millimeters from his face. MMGH, tie old head. Give it back! Issei yelled, frustration and desperation giving him enough of a boost to shoot his leg and kick the old in the shin. Ack! The man groaned as his body curled from the pain. The ball dropped and rolled over to Issei, who excitedly went to grab it, but was suddenly interrupted as he was smacked in the back of the head. What the hell's wrong with you, kiddo? You like hitting your elders, eh? Ah! ING head, what the hell's wrong with you? You like bullying little kids? Pedo! Issei bit back while clutching his head. A tiny bump had appeared where the man had delivered the downward smack from heaven. Pay a little, the old man attempted to argue. Pedo! 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 But Issei was angry and out for revenge. Shut up! The man rushed forward and put his hand on the boy's mouth. He looked around just in case. When he saw the area was clear of any potential adult onlookers, he sighed and stepped back. He leaned, grabbed the ball, and gave it back to Issei. Here, get your ball back to your daddy. You won't have to spend his weekly check on replacing it. Issei said nothing. He was giddy that he got his ball back, but he also felt confused. Though immature, even his pea-brain could understand the man meant no harm. Thanks. And, HM? You're not a pedicuri. The man let out a wistful chuckle. Ah, don't sweat it, sport. I've been called worse. Some of it not undeserved. Issei once again took a moment to stare in silence. He saw the man slump down on the bench and grab his discarded book, which now that he was closer. A manga. His heart skipped a beat. He had never seen an older person read manga. Most thought they were stupid cartoonish stuff. What manga's that? Issei, in his renewed excitement, asked the question so fast it sounded slurred. He ran over to the man to try and peek at his manga. Whoa, slow down, bucko, you're not four. The old man said. Issei's cheeks tinted with embarrassment, and he took a breath to calm down. What manga is that? The old man rose a brow and slowly shifted his gaze from the kid to his manga. This? Oh, a mid-90s classic. Spy Master North Star. He announced with slight overdramatic gusto. Issei giggled slightly, then his expression shifted into confusion. I've never heard of it. Gah! The old man went pale, his soul leaving his body for a second. Those words, innocent as they were a stab to his heart. He coughed and recollected himself. Well, they used to be a golden standard along with Berserk and Dragon Ball, but nowadays, I guess spy fiction isn't the heat with youngsters. As spy fiction? Issei muttered out the question, unsure of what the words meant. It was like an alien word for the 8-year-old. What's that? Spy fiction is wait him. The old man had paused, for he knew explaining the textbook definition of the genre would just leave him confused and bored. He had to speak the language of his generation. Do you know the James Bond movies? No. Issei shook his head. Nick Fury? He tried again. Nah. A failure again. The old man groaned on the verge of giving up. Batman? He asked somewhat trepidly. Oh, I know that one. Issei jumped up a little, giddy at one of his top 5 superheroes being mentioned. I am Shadow, I am Knight, Robin. Batarang. The old man couldn't help but smile at the boy's enthusiasm to emulate the Dark Knight. Even if he butchered the characterization horribly. Not exactly how it goes, but yeah, pretty much. So, the spy genre is basically episodes of a Batman show. The protagonist has cool tech, like lasers and stuff? Issei cut in, his excitement not letting him listen through. Sometimes, yes. They're given this tech to do one thing, and one thing only, stop bad guys. Like the Joker and Penguin? Issei asked, tilting his head. The old man rubbed his head, unsure how to proceed. Those are more street thugs. I'm talking about real big shots. Like a politician, a general, even the President of America? The old man paused for a moment, and didn't know whether to laugh or stare at the kid in slight horror. What are they teaching these kids at school? If the president is evil, then yeah. They're sent out to deal with him, too. He answered, pushing his fedora down a little. But how will they beat him? He's got a whole army with him. Issei asked, his interest clearly bursting like a brim-full gold mine. Smart kid. See, the spies aren't superhuman, at least not like Goku or Superman. To save the world, they need to rely on their wit. Think of all the times you've outplayed your friends in soccer. Spies weaponize that kind of brainpower to get the drop on the villains and sock them in the... The boy exclaimed happily, uppercutting the air a few times and laughing triumphantly. The man felt sorry for his imaginary opponent. Sure. It's not recommended, but anything works if it's to save the world. That is what a spy is all about. Track your enemy, counter everything they can dish out and be in victory. The man leaned forward, his tone lowering to a whisper. And if you're lucky, a hot chick with big S as a side reward. Awesome, Issei muttered as his eyes shone with intense interest. The man had said the 3 things his young years unconsciously loved to hear. beating bad guys, saving the world and Big S. Don't quote me on that last one, kid, I'm not a writer. The old man said, slapping his knee. Issei giggled. The more he thought about the man's words, the more his elation grew, and the more the ticking minutes on his watch became a background noise. Hey, could you tell me some spy stories? He requested, practically jumping in place. The old man paused to stare at the kid. For a second, he saw his own 8-year-old self. Elated, energetic and optimistic. Wanting to hear war hero stories. Wanting to be one himself. He idly noticed the sky had gone dark through peripheral vision. It's running, Latia, what the hell? I can spare some 30 minutes. He'll be safer with me anyways. A smile creeped up on his face, and he patted the empty spot next to him. Come on, sit down, kid. You're in for a ride. Yay! With one last energetic jump, he got on the bench and began listening as the man retold his services in the CIA, thinly veiled as made-up manga stories. Kenzo Ozawa, age 78, former CIA agent born on September 20, 1927. He watched with a smile as the young boy with the brown puff of hair on his head skipped happily back to his house next street, a spy manga in his hand. With a decrepit groan he got off the bench and started walking home, clutching his cane with newly rejuvenated vigor. He watched with a smile, the boy's form disappearing in the distance. Kids these days are so feisty, heh? His parents will probably be mad at him for worrying the life out of them, Kenzo said. It was an odd thing. He knew his time was up. He could feel it in his bones, the exhausted bundle of muscles in his chest, a heart of 78, pumping away its last bits of vitality. His children, adoptive and biological, had not called in years, and he didn't even know who his grandchildren were. If he had any. His siblings had remained in Japan, becoming CEOs and public servants, dying in monotony. Only he had succeeded in life. And even then, he came back to their swampy little town. Ko, the birthplace of the Ozawas. But the town was now almost a city, metropolitan and concrete. And his wife had died long before he returned. And old Kenzo Ozawa would die alone. But strangely, he was happy. It was as if fate smiled upon him one last time. The chance to share his obsession about superhuman spy agents with another. The thrilling romanticized adventures of his former profession. The underrated charm of winning not through brute force, but wit and teamwork. And all the cool gadgets that came with it. I haven't had this much fun in years. Kenzo spoke to himself. That brat better give it back. Above all, Kenzo was known as the town's stingiest person. He didn't just hand out his possessions to random folk. But he knew deep down, in that rotten heart of his, that young Issei Hayata had the makings of a hero. He smiled wistfully, knowing he wouldn't get to see that potential fully realized. Ah well, next time I meet him I'll tell him about the mission in Ukraine. And then, Kenzo Ozawa's heart stopped. Dossier number 1. Babipa Babipa. Sector Zeta B9 has encountered an incursion after effect. We just lost contact with Zeta B9. I'm rerouting tacit field counteractuators through a backdoor wormhole path. 99 Chrysler's exponential surge of time fractals. Can somebody get the blood and stratastabilizers online? On and on the alarms and screaming reports went, like a continuous orchestra of desperation and pandemonium which surpassed even the performances of Bach in their explosiveness. She traversed the dimension flux corridors, passing through several intertemporal microcompress rifts to enter the control room of System C-44, the team of operatives responsible for handling the law-frame Archimote engine cores to a satisfactory stability in case of emergencies like these. As she entered and the blaring of distorted hypersonic alarms blasted her beyond human eardrums, she felt an immediate headache forming. On the 6th, no, maybe even 10th on the Ernestine scale of unmoderated migraines. I wonder at times, is this what the poor, ill-prepared souls at Chernobyl felt before the disaster? She thought to herself as panic flooded her thoughts like an acidic drizzle and apprehension clouded her judgment like heavy smog. An entire primetime line was at stake and all she could do was meander about like a college graduate. As low in the proverbial hierarchical ladder of operatives within the astral nexus of the Awayan organization as she was, Patricia was still something beyond existence and creation itself. Better performance was expected of her, As a natural sentinel, she observed a single universe through the same lens a programmer might see the digital universe of their video game project. She rarely could relate to the inner workings of such a constrained reality. But that also meant she had little control over herself, or the universe she was assigned to monitor when accidents on an unprecedented magnitude occurred. And probably much like Alexander Akhimov and Leonid Topchinov during the last seconds before the disaster, her thoughts were racing and clashing violently at how to respond to these unknown variables. And unlike them, I don't have my own AZ5 button. There's no brakes once this reactor starts accelerating. The initial panic from the invasive space-time impact with iteration 1984, the aforementioned universe she was in charge of observing from outside, still clung to her like a gamma tumor. As much as her boss told her it's nobody's fault, she couldn't stop blaming her tunnel vision when she was first assigned to this project. Why hadn't she double-checked the outer dimensional membrane defenses? No time for self-doubting. I have to get the main workstation in order before someone initiates the wrong protocol and blows up a galaxy cluster. Excuse me, everyone. Despite her steeled nerves, her voice came out meek, every drop of uncertainty in her form now dripping out like an open wound. Her sharp glare immediately faltered as the ruckus of shouts, people bumping into people and barked requests/information relays drove her eardrums to near rupturing. Eliezer, where's the goddamn report from System C-38? We've got supermassive black holes tearing the dimensional veil a new crack. I know, Caro, I know, Monad, damn you. Their information can't exactly travel instantaneously. It has to reach through the Citra-Acra ontology networks to avoid the Heisenberg principle coming into effect. I don't care, tell them to use acausal ionic amplifiers if they have to. We need that data right now. Patricia rubbed her temples, doing her best to stifle the arising migraine. Even though her hands were gloved, she could feel the shaking, the rigid chill that rattled her quintessential essence from inside. Everyone, please calm down, we need to work this BBY the book or 99, 100 no, wait, 98, 95 and now it's 99 again. Subspace antiparadox quantum wave counteroffensive failed, offsetting the signal by 0.3 intensity. Sector Zeta B8 went dark too. Probably another waveform temporal collapse event. Why in the bloody are the Stratabloodian stabilizers not bloody and online? She wanted to stomp her feet. She wanted to stomp her feet on the cold steel-like floor and yell at the top of her lungs, because she couldn't endure any more of this. The alarms kept blaring, the buttons kept being pressed, digital data analysis screens kept appearing and disappearing and nobody was shutting the hell up, but she couldn't. All she did was tap her foot ferociously, and stand there with her shoulders slumped, and her posture low like she wanted to curl up and cry. But right before the first tear could form, silence! Everyone covered their ears and dropped to their knees with the sole exception of Patricia, who heard the utterance of the command as a faint, gentle whisper. The al walls of System C-44's mainframe workstation bent inwards and the visage of everything rippled as if they were previously staring through a clean water surface and some higher power had just splashed it. Gah! Ugh, lady! Grunts and groans, not so much from pain, but rather from a burden placed upon their very ontology as things that made it difficult to even breathe. Even the systems and workstation I/O devices went fully silent. Heck, the concept of sound itself within that room bowed down to that voice. And in that rippling tranquility, Patricia saw the flash of a pillar of electromagnetic surge, shooting up into a swirl of countless stars before reforming the workstation and the order of concepts within. From the eldritch flash came a little girl, about 12 in appearance, but with the presence of an ancient god. El Lady Akane, Patricia finally muttered, quiet and flustered to herself. A dust of pink trailed over her cheeks, from the sheer embarrassment. This was the exact situation she was afraid her boss would find her in. If you peons keep screaming like panicked little kids on the final exams, I will have all of you stationed on the lower levels. Do I make myself clear? Akane's voice cut through the air like a sharpened blade, expressing her anger and frustration with the professionalism of someone 5 times her actual age. It was a warning delivered with an even tone, her voice raising just enough, carrying a sharp bite that got the memo across. Patricia's heart throbbed with wonder and envy. She couldn't even get the room to listen for 1 second. Akane spoke, and the very dimensional boundaries seemed to stand at attention. With one expert usage of the right tone inflections, she let every one of her employees know she wasn't spite, just disappointed. She truly is a transcendental genius. But Lady Himejima, one tried to object, but was shot down with a raised hand. It wasn't any magic or use of power, that was just how commanding Akane's presence was. Status report. Now, she demanded, that quiet power oozing even stronger still. It took one of the mainframe operators but 2 seconds before Akane had her report. She shot a glance at the data, scrolling and running her eyes through what was probably thousands of lines of information, before swiftly discarding it. All right then. The situation's rapidly unfolding like 2020 US politics, but at least there's no aeon movements nor any reality collapse events yet. She read through all that data as if it was just a single sentence. Her cognitive functions are beyond cosmic. Patricia blinked, the very idea of someone processing near endless droves of information still baffling her, despite all the time she knew Lady Akane Himejima. She was so enamored with her boss' cognitive capabilities that it initially didn't hit her that Akane's silent piercing glare, and the silent stares of the working staff, were all boring into her. Patricia sputtered and nearly let go of the ediblet she was clutching, catching it but failing to grab it at first, making it spin in the air, before she finally caught it with both hands. She sighed and shoved her face in it, wanting to bury herself in the circuits of the device. Patricia? Akane asked, her voice gentler when addressing her personally, but still sharp as steel. Sorry, so sorry, Lady Ak. The gnawing crimson void spoke to them, inserting words and new ontologies into the very structure of reality around them, glyphs and symbols flying past their eyes, in both their past and their future, at the same time. They floated like astronauts in zero gravity, helpless against the tide that corroded any semblance of cosmic order. Their existences began unraveling like silk threads. I invoke thee, isn't it? A mirthful laughter resonated with the very walls of every dimension there ever was, and a hand blacker and bigger than the gnawing void itself swatted it away like a fly, clearing the space off its taint. With a snap of her fingers, Akane unleashed several arcs of fractal electromagnetic power which bounced off fragments of the broken workstation, rearranging the world back in place. Everyone, including Patricia, slammed back down on the reformed floor and gasped for air. Some even kissed the ground and others were in a ball whimpering. This was exactly why Patricia was hesitant to utter it. The true name of the highest elite servants of the pillar gods of Exe. The emanations and avatars of their absolute totalities and the eons of their multiverse. To even speak their official rank was like inviting a piece of their true might to come haunt you. Bloody in hell, Akane, the hell's wrong with. Oh, cool your teapot, King and George. I had countermeasures prepared in advance. Nobody was in any real danger. Some chuckled at the Akane's jab at their colleague's heavy British accent, while others still glared with slight suspicion. But still why? Patricia out of everyone dared to bring her superior's course of actions to question. It was not a preferred action, but the hierarchy of the astral nexus did not forbid critique towards anyone or anything. I wanted to test if our little invader friend was truly as sneaky as he probably thinks he is. And this is the surest fire way to have absolute, 101% certainty that what we are dealing with is. Everyone braced themselves, wincing, as they expected another invocation of that accursed title and the subsequent consequences of it. But it never came. Instead they stood there looking ridiculous while their boss shook her head with a slight smirk, which she hid expertly. A prime-class Eevee. Oh God. I thought you were gonna. I might need a new pair of pants, bruh. A symphony of relieved sighs resounded, and Patricia would be lying if she said she didn't want to join them. She had never personally encountered those things, especially not the higher-ranked ones. They say you need to try everything at least once, but that was something she wouldn't want to experience again. If it weren't for her enhanced sentinel abilities, the sheer presence of that gnawing crimson void would have reduced her to atoms as her consciousness tore itself apart. I do apologize for not warning you all, but hopefully you guys now understand why we need to be absolutely diligent and on point with our workflow and organization. The enemy is nigh omniscient, nigh omnipotent, nigh omnicapable. The more you worry about what you can't do, the more time you give that thing to do whatever it is doing. Akane spoke to them, her sharp tone now assuring and almost motherly, which was an irony not lost on the whole staff. All nodded along in agreement, head hanging somewhat low, either from self-deprecation or imminent regret at taking this job. Normally, I would leave it at that and trust you to handle the job, but it seems I need to stay around for a bit to regulate the pipelines. Bit of a shame, since I'm looking forward to meeting good old Purgy soon, but until you guys learn to operate properly under stress, you will be closely supervised by me or some of the other higher-ups. And there it was, the utter disappointment their boss had with their lack of competence and proper emotional self-regulation. Akane let that silence marinate for a bit, before tapping her heel and humming. With that said, everybody go to your assigned posts, keep me updated on the situation and listen to every single word I say. Follow every command and request I make. No complaints. Understood? Yes, ma'am. They all responded in unison, voices clear and loud, like a squad of trained soldiers. And just like a squad of trained soldiers, they all went back to their posts, except for Patricia, who stumbled for a bit. Patricia, a minute, please? Akane once again addressed Patricia personally with a slightly gentler tone. She took a step towards her, and held her gaze with sharp but now warmer eyes. Patricia couldn't help but feel like she was being observed by a doting older sibling, which sounded ridiculous. She was bigger, taller, and technically older than her young. She still felt like the little sister here. It isn't my place to tell you what to do 24/7, but you have to remember, a system needs a stable star to be in balance, otherwise the whole thing falls apart. Akane said, and then without further elaboration left her there. Patricia rubbed her hands, brows furrowed deep as she failed to capture the meaning. But even as cryptic as Lady Akane's message was, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had somehow failed to meet her expectations. The Hayata residence. While destined to be a grand hotel, a mansion of billionaire proportions one day, for now it was still in its humble beginnings. A cloistered and demure little 2-story house, white as snow walls, bland roof tiles and a simple balcony for hanging the clothes to dry. It was the perfect average unassuming suburban house. Except, inside the house, it was anything but average, unassuming or perfect. Issei, get off the table right now. A female voice belonging to one distraught Miki Hayata tore through the air like a lioness growl. None can do, Mrs. Hayata, for I, the great Dragnarok, am here on a top-secret mission. The target of her stress, her little 10-year-old son Issei, was comically perched up on their dinner table, one beheaded toy in hand and a toy Nerf gun in the other. His little feet still had his sweaty socks on as he rubbed them all over the table. Something which enraged the Hayata matriarch further. Issei, you're not on a secret mission, you're just dirtying the house. Now please, for the love of God, just come down. Quiet, woman. I can sense her. My archenemy approaches. Mickey, at this point, saw red and was just about ready to grab her sandal and start laying an absolute whooping on the disobedient self-absorbed child. But just as she knelt down, she felt a gentle but firm hand on her shoulder. Goro, let go of me, I need to teach this little freak a lesson. Mickey hissed, her voice stern and heavy with the anger of a scorned Asian mom. No, Mickey. We don't need to resort to that yet. Besides, calling our son a freak is a bit much, don't you think? Goro placated his wife, offering his perspective on things. A perspective which she was about to dismiss before she peeped his worried expression, for both her and their son, and she relented. You're right, I didn't mean to. But we've been dealing with this, for the past 2 years, ever since Issei met that old creep that hangs around the parks and got him hooked up on spy fiction. Yeah, never knew why the police never arrested him. Half the neighbors here filed a complaint about him, and they always said they couldn't touch him. Goro agreed with his wife on this, but still wanted to offer a silver lining. Well, at least he didn't give him PRN to read. Old men round here are perverted freaks to the bone. And just freaks in general. Yeah, remember the bloody Christmas tree incident, last December? That Mitsuki girl? I still can't believe someone would. Woof. Woof. Crash. The sound of a ceramic object landing on the floor and breaking, followed by the quiet spurts of water spilling out and wetting the floor, was so devastating, Goro could swear he saw his wife's patience physically snap. Aha, the big bad President Wolf, wait, Keikumo Stofahal. The great Dragnarok's Secret Service agent childish voice imitation completely gave way to the licks and incessant head rubs he endured by the assault of a small, blue and white furred canine. The scene would have been adorable, and might have fully melted his wife's anger if not for the 60 kien Meiji era vase that now lay broken in 12 pieces, the water inside pooling around the boy and the little dog. "Oh, Kami, help us all," he secretly finished in his head, not wanting his wife's boiling hot anger to be directed at him due to a badly phrased comment. Said wife's eyes surged with the burning fury of twin suns, and Goro could have sworn he saw actual balls of fire surge from her eye sockets. "What the heck do I keep saying about getting on the table with the new vase? This is the second one, Issei." Mickey's rage practically caused a local earthquake, and Goro, once again, could swear his wife was bending the laws of physics as objects around the house seemed to levitate for a moment. Her beautiful brown hair flew up like a dancing flame, and she grabbed her sandal and took aim. "That's it, young man, no more monkeying around with the dog or you're grounded for life." With pure motherly strength, she threw the sandal so hard Goro swore it turned into a searing trail of light, like a comet. Hup! Dragon roll! But with a somewhat ridiculous yet also precise jump and roll, the 10-year-old ninja impersonator dodged the sandal comet by a hairbreadth. Whoa! I know Shin and Irina like to show him how to fight with sticks, but this is new. Did he learn it from one of those spy jumbo comics? Goro thought, slightly impressed. Also concerned, hoping Issei wouldn't grow up to believe he could use that in a real fight. The little boy wonder, with his grand feat achieved, smirked deviously and pointed at his new primary threat. "Ah, so the fiery demoness wants to lock me up in her ivory tower. But you will never take me." He then threw a makeshift smoke bomb, which was really just a thin cloth with flour, and it spilled on the floor without obscuring anything. Goro wanted to cry. He had cleaned the laminated wooden planks till they glistened just hours ago. "Die demoness?" Mickey was at a loss for words. Literally, she couldn't even form a sentence, she just started growling and every vein in her body throbbed with sheer fury. And righteous as it was, Goro remembered the summer of last year and wanted to avoid the house getting demolished from inside. He grasped her shoulder, still gentle but with a bit more firmness so she wouldn't just brush his hand off. "Honey, just let him be, he's in that phase right now, he'll fix his own mess later," he said. Her infernal glare was on him, and for a brief second Goro thought she might genuinely rip his hand off. Then he remembered this was his wife. "Goro, we can't just let him run around like Tarzan. This is the second antique vase I bought that he has broken. And he has to learn he can't go around calling the dog Big Bad President, or me a demoness." Right, I get that completely. But if you let him tire himself out playing with the dog, he'd be easier to deal with. We don't have to contribute to trashing the house and you can give him a spanking all you like," Goro offered, hitting her with one of his dashing I have the solution type smirks that always won her heart, and she calmed down, the sizzling fireballs in her eyes dispersing. "That's not a bad call, actually." Mickey smiled and leaned in, pecking him affectionately on the lips. "My charming problem-solving prince. Or I guess, charming demon?" She began poking and rubbing his chest with her finger while flashing a sultry little grin, and Goro immediately felt his pants get heavier by a bit. "God, I really hope Issei is deep asleep tonight. That is what I'm for, honey, hee." He stammered after a pause, his cheeks practically glowing red. Well, I guess you deserve a proper reward for being such a good prince demon?" Mickey purred, voicing out the innuendo like she was the same young woman Goro had fallen head over heels for. One stroke of his chin, and he became soft like putty in her hands. "God, keep my son asleep and my life is yours. But really, I am worried about our boy Goro," Mickey said, her provocative sensual self fading, much to Goro's dismay. She crossed her arms and observed little Issei running around shouting some James Bond-inspired nonsense about global conspiracies, bombs and flying dog people. It made little sense to the Hayato matriarch, but she couldn't help but smile warmly at the scene, despite her eyebrows twitching every time he hit a house object. "Mickey?" Goro asked, noticing his wife's unusual silence. "I love that he's found his own little hobby, and it isn't something that'd turn him into a complete degenerate, But she turned to him, and her smile turned sad, almost burdened by her motherly worry for the boy. It bothers me, dear. He has an almost freakish obsession, especially after he heard that old man who gave him his first comics passed away on the same night they met. That stunned Gora briefly. Normally his wife had a relatively straightforward way of approaching life, no hidden semantics. She knew what she wanted to do or say, and she did and said it without hesitation. But this was shockingly deep. He pondered on it. Gora and his wife had always found that particular old man weird, to say the least. A bit of a dodgy geezer, as his friend Tuji often put it. Stranger danger type. When he first heard from Issei he had met and talked to him, his heart froze like stone and Mickey's skin turned pale. But the way he talked about old man Ozawa, you think he's trying to remember him this way? Gora asked. Mickey's response came after a heavy pause, her beautiful hazel eyes lidded slightly, heavy from contemplations. Possibly. I'm still having trouble around the idea that Mr. Ozawa might have been a misunderstood old sweetheart. And beyond that, there's also the dog. Gora nodded, his eyes landing on Kumo. Kumo was a wild pup they had found January this year, not that far off from the giant Christmas tree in the city park that became the scene of the most gruesome crime scene of Ko in years. The dog was a mystifying wonder, and everyone who saw her adored her to no end. Gora was tempted to call her an envoy of the gods. From her odd white and blue fur that almost seemed to glow under the moonlight, glimmering blue eyes like sapphires, and agility and strength that didn't match its size and age, it was a complete mystery box for the Haida couple. But Issei, being the bleeding heart of gold that he is, and Mickey and Gora themselves being the fierce ecologists that they are, took the dog in and adopted it as the house pet. It didn't even take it 2 months to become sort of the neighborhood mascot. She's been a great addition to the family, and I know she loves Issei dearly, but she brings unnecessary amounts of attention. Mix it with hispy phases and all the other bizarre stuff and you get a disaster of a social life. Mickey finally broke the moment of silence, getting Gora's eyes back on herself. What do you mean, honey? Gora asked. He had an idea where she was going with this, just didn't want to push it further. Gora, I'm scared our son might not have friends his age. Mickey responded with a slight quiver of the lip. Yup, Gora thought, there it is. And it was as difficult for her to admit this as it would have been for him. But it was a just concern to have. I don't know what to do, who to call, which school to push him to attend. Tuji and Elena left and took Irina with them to England, and just last year Akari and Rowan went to Scotland with Shin and Akane. And this whole year it's just been him and the dog. Gora nodded again, rubbing his chin and furrowing his brows, before giving his own input on the matter. Honestly, dear, you're right to think like that. I can't say I haven't had nightmares that Issei's wife will end up being the damn dog. Mickey's expression went from horrified to angry to just a be serious man facade in quick succession after she heard that. Gora chuckled and rubbed the back of his head. Kidding? Well, mostly, I did have some nightmares about the dog. But anyways, my point is, I can see where you're coming from. However, I believe if we pushed and tried controlling what he does, he might end up even more isolated and lose any realistic chance of forming bonds with his peers. You remember how your father used to, no? His voice fizzed out as he was uncertain how to approach the topic he was connecting to this case. Beat me and my sister in a drunken rage? Yeah, unfortunately. Mickey, direct as always, tackled those bad memories with the subtlety of a bomb. Her hazel eyes sparkled and she gasped, connecting the dots. Wait, Goro, are you implying if we try correcting him in every turn it'll make things worse? Gora shrugged. Don't take my word as gospel. I've just read on some books on child psychology, and asked some colleagues for advice, and the families with the happiest kids were usually those who allowed a degree of freedom of expression. I'll take this into account, thank you. But are you certain this is the right way to approach his quirks? The other kids might avoid him for being a weirdo. Mickey said, her lips curled in a small pout. PSH, Mickey, I was weird as hell when I was young and I still managed to pull you, the hottest girl in YLCH. Gora let out a cry, his nerves stinging from the pain of having his foot lightly stomped on. Goro. Be serious. This is our son's future we're talking about. Mickey snapped, glaring at him, despite a trail of pink forming on her cheeks. Oh woman, I am definitely not letting you sleep tonight. Goro monologued internally with wolfish hunger. But he suppressed his more kinky thoughts and focused on approaching the problem Mickey had presented. Honestly, no matter what we do or what the kid does, it feels like he's destined to have a bumpy road ahead, but even so, right or wrong, we owe it to our son to let him walk his path in life. And if he fails or starts going astray, we just have to give him a guiding hand. Maybe the gals and the pals at his schools won't appreciate his special talents, but I know someone will. Oh wow, where did that come from? Mickey stood completely dumbfounded, and even Goro himself was stunned by the resolute introspection he delivered. He laughed awkwardly and rubbed his neck, grinning cheekily. To mean, I guess that's how I personally see I'm MPH. He was cut off by his very ravenous and very smitten wife damn near pouncing on him like a hungry cat and locking lips with him. This time the kiss was more passionate, deeper, as she even inserted her tongue inside. She wrapped her hands around his neck, pulling him into her warm body, and Goro had to hold every fiber, every molecule in his being not to sink his fingers in her shapely, slam her on the table and start ravaging her right there and then. The kid, man, the kid! Not in front of the kid! Keeping his hands and third leg at bay was probably the hardest thing he'd done all day. God, almost 18 years of marriage, and he still felt like a horned dog who couldn't keep his hands off his girl. With a wet smack and saliva connecting their lips, Mickey settled down, stroking his neck, and smirked affectionately. Goro Hayato, you're the best husband a woman could ask for. This was probably the second best thing you've ever said to me. Goro, almost drunk on lust now, gave her a shameless leer and eyed her like she was a delectable meal. Is the first when I said your thing tastes like strawberry milkshake? Mickey blinked, just unable to comprehend the sheer dashing shamelessness and blunt charm of her husband, before the comment rattled her senses with arousal. Mickey bit her lip and leaned in to whisper into his ear. You. Me. Bed. In 1 hour. Hallelujah! Goro was practically busting Michael Jackson moves in his head. He was sure if gravity didn't limit him, he would be flying through the stratosphere about now. Crash! Both Mickey and Goro flinched, being shaken out of their lustful stupor that almost threatened to devolve into something their son shouldn't be seeing. Thankfully, the kid made sure nothing explicit happened, by breaking their 30k yen impossible bottle that contained the World War II destroyer Fubuki toy replica, thus getting their full attention. Woof! Woof! Ah! Vile Wolf President! You have sunk the ship in the bottle. You must answer for your crimes with blood, Issei declared, with all the threatening edge his shrill derpy kid voice could deliver. Goro sighed and Mickey exhaled like an angry bull. Right, before all that, I need to deal with that. Without wasting a second, Mickey grabbed the sandal she had thrown earlier and, wielding it like a weapon of mass destruction, marched towards Issei. The only one paying with blood today is you, young man. Aya! Woof! 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 The next day, after a whole night of bed-breaking activities and reawakening of old kinks, Issei's parents were in the best mood he'd seen them in for a while now. Mickey even let him go on a walk outside with the dog later than usual. However, you must be back before 10 or else no more outings with the dog, was her ultimatum. His dad Goro, of course, being the more lenient parent, added, at least not alone. And if you come late it better be for a good reason. Issei nodded his head and assured his parents at least a dozen times over that'd he be fine. He knew how to avoid suspicious strangers, to keep himself and Kumo away from bigger dogs, especially strays, and to watch which streets he's walking through. His responses almost became mechanical at one point, which thankfully was the cue his mom needed to finally trust him and let him walk out the door. Even though he had promised to walk the dog with a leash, he merely grabbed it, and the second he was outside, shoved it in his jacket's pocket. That's the one thing he wouldn't follow to AT. Kumo's a smart dog. Smarter than all other dogs. And Issei, as the inspiring soon-to-be greatest spy, was smarter than most kids. And they had complete trust in each other, so a leash was just unnecessary. Kumo and him shared an almost telepathic link. If he thought of a trick, she would do it before he even tried testing her. Been a while since it was just us two, Kumo? Issei asked, smiling at his dog. Kumo barked joyously in response, wagging her tail and jumping once in excitement. Issei couldn't resist her charm, patting her on the head and scratching her fur a little. People usually rubbed her, but light scratching was what really got her to cloud nine. With any luck we're gonna find you some squirrels to chase. Woof. Guessing that's a yes? Woof. Okay, girl. Stop reading my mind though, you'll get lost in the grand puzzle that is the Great Dragnaroks. Issei exclaimed, posing extravagantly, trying to imitate several legendary spy characters he had been obsessing over recently. Kumo tilted her head before striding forward and licking his hand, both an act of affection and to mock his uber seriousness. Okay, stop. Kumo, I'm gonna be the great drool man at this point, Issei said, to which Kumo just barked in something like mirthful amusement. Well, okay girl, how about it, ready to chase some squirrels? Roof. Okay then, off we go, to the lands of mystery, Issei proclaimed, proudly engaging into a march, and pointed in the direction of the street that led to the park. Just then, he almost slammed into a girl that zipped by like a speeding bullet. The girl and him made eye contact for the briefest of moments before she passed him and continued running in the opposite direction of where he was going with downright inhuman speed. She was surrounded by wisps of some type of bluish-black mist, which almost looked like they were giving her greater aerodynamism. From that tiny glimpse he caught of her, she was every bit as paranormal as Kumo herself was. Silver gray hair, purple eyes, and an outfit like nothing he had seen before. And weirdest of all, Kumo went completely still for a moment after the girl had passed before barking viciously and taking off, almost as lightning fast as the girl herself. Kumo, wait! What the heck's gotten into her? Oh god, if I don't get her now, Mom's gonna kill me! Without any more time spared for questions, Issei took off into a sprint after the girl and his dog. Look up and tip my elegant brown Borsalino hat, feeling the suede and velvety texture beneath my fingers, enveloping the medium-wide brim with my coarse fingers, like grasping the hand of a stiff woman, and I brushed aside a strand of black hair, knowing that today was one of those days. My name is Go Mamazono. I'm 28 years old. My humble house is in the northeast section of Ko, where all the villas and the affluent households are, and I am not married, although my older brother is and has a precious daughter. I work as one of the producers at Toei Animation Studio, and I get home every day by 10 p.m. at the earliest. I don't smoke, but I drink a lot. A lot of caffeine drinks. Anywho, I'm in bed by 2 a.m. and I always forget to get the healthy 8 hours of sleep, no matter what. After having a dozen cups of warm coffee and doing about 1 hour of fidgeting around my house, I go to bed. I usually have many problems sleeping until the morning. Just like a crackhead, I wake up with lots of fuel-ish. Suddenly, the introspecting man, Go, collided with and was blown back, spun around like an unwilling ballerina, by some invisible force that strangely resembled one of those mystic spiritual barriers he saw some of his animation staff add to that big-time Dragon Ball project he used to work on 5 years ago. Whoa! Go screamed for his life as he continued spinning at high velocity. At this point he might as well have looked like a human-sized Beyblade. Woof! 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 Wham! Until an odd-furred dog collided with him, stopping his spin and making him stumble forward, almost falling and giving the street an intimate smooch, but he flailed his arms wildly and jumped an inch forward, gaining enough balance to catch himself. Kumo, wait up, stop chasing her. Bad girl, bad. A kid, a little boy, no older than 10, dashed past him just as he regained a semblance of a footing, his side crashing into Go's left leg, making him fall flat on his face, touted up in the air. At the same time, his precious, dapper Borsalino fedora hat flew off his head and landed right into the hands of the clueless child, that not only didn't know what the heck got his doggy acting like a wolf with a vendetta, but also had failed to notice the man at all. What's the boy's eyes widened as he inspected the new object in his circumstantial possession, gasping loud like one of those sniveling little brats that saw Go whenever he went to a special annual event dressed as Goku. Didn't help he already had a spiky black hair to go along with the fake orange GI. Oh my god, A real detective top. A detective what? Wait, my hat! Go sprung up like a ghoul sensing fresh meat, looking almost hysterical at the realization he had truly gone, and dropped his hat. Kid! He groaned, dusting himself off. He'd be damned if he'd walk around with his silken dark Armani suit with street dirt on it, and took off chasing after the kid. Kid, get back here! Give me my hat back! Kid! The boy, whose brown hazel eyes were sparkling with pure stars in them, his mouth wide and damn near drooling, didn't give an indication he had heard him. Go idly questioned if he wasn't dealing with someone with rabies, but dashed that thought away at a much more pressing matter. Oh Jesus, if he slobbers my sweet hat one more time I will murder this brat. He didn't even notice when they turned a corner, one of the streets leading down towards the southwest Sakura Park. Even in distress, he could still recognize it. He had taken his niece there for a leisurely walk all the time. Kid, stop running and drop the hat or I'll call the cops, he said to the boy, who seemed so absorbed in his own world, until he heard the threat and snapped out of it. The kid looked back while running after that damned oddball of a dog and the even stranger girl that had flown past him earlier. Sorry, uncle, I need this, I'm on a high chase investigation. The boy told him, a radiant smile of adventuristic enthusiasm plastered on his face, like he had been told he can go join the Justice League or something. And as sudden as this whole debacle had occurred, the boy just turned back around and sped off, faster than ever. If not for the fact he put his hat on his little head, Go would have found it adorable and impressive how a 10-year-old could run this fast. But at the moment, all the producer saw was a thief running off with his possession. Investy, you little, do you think this is some prank you can pull on me? Get your back here! And who the hell are you calling uncle? God, my poor 40,000 yen Borsellino hat. Issei just couldn't believe it. A real, authentic, Yusaku Matsuda classic trilby hat. The curves, the soft yet supple material. Although, the shape is a little different, dang it, it's not the real thing. The boy's heart almost throbbed with a pang of wistful sadness at the fact that God hadn't miraculously dropped him the coolest possible hat of one of the coolest actors to ever be. Despite his mother restricting access to any old movies like that which according to her had stories heavier than what a sweet kid like him should absorb, Issei still shamelessly played the discs whenever his parents were out for more than 2 hours and like a truest of spies, leaving absolutely no trace or evidence of his deed. And that was how the great Ragnarok had come to know sleek sleazy killer Yusaku Matsuda, or more accurately his many detective roles like Shuicho Tsujiyama. Which was the beginning of his trilby hat fever. Mom, please, can I get one? I really need to have one. My career as the #1 spy depends on it. Arg, have you been watching those damn detective movies again? Issei, no, you'll look ridiculous. But Mom, no buts, sweetie, I can buy you an anime hat if you want to. Apparently it's the rage with kids these days. He had groaned, puffed his cheeks, whined and nearly thrown a tantrum, but the fiery demon empress, the goddess of endless pain, would not relent. And he had reminded himself that great spies don't let their emotions show. So he had bitten his lip and held it in, while his mom continued her infamous 2-hour-long shopping spree at Kyoto Mall. He didn't want an anime hat. Those looked ridiculous, and any kids around his age would treat him like a chump. Well, they'd mock and tease him even harder than they already do while he's out and about in school on his super serious recon missions. Oh, look at spy agent Dragawido, trying to find his way back to the psych ward, haha. Creepy little kid, he's probably looking to spy on the girls. Hey, Hayadu, wanna spy the insides of your locker, poophead? But if he had an authentic trilby one, no one would bully him. Their ignorant eyes will finally open to the truth that he was a great spy agent, destined to topple evil empires. He'll see. He adjusted the hat neatly on his head. It was a little big, but thanks to his peculiar hairdo, which blew out and spiked like a palm leaf fan, he was able to mathematically discover just the right angle to incline it to make it stable. The true form of the great Ragnarok, born at last. Woof! 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 Kythiad, get back here or... Oh. Right. He was in the middle of a chase. A chase his dog had unexplainedly initiated by flying straight at the fleeting mysterious girl who was speeding through streets with the aerodynamism of one of James Bond's supercars. She was fast. He knew for a fact his dog was abnormally fast. Kumo's set record was 45 kilometers per hour, as tested by himself and his father. But the runaway princess was even faster than that somehow. Significantly faster. Kumo, wait up girl, his voice cut off into a wheeze. That's when it hit him. The adrenaline of potentially losing sight of his dog, mixed with the excitement of unleashing his truest detective form, had made his small boy body resistant to the effects of trying to keep up with Usain Bolt-esque speedsters. His heart was pounding, his lungs strained to inhale the immense amounts of oxygen, and his knees were 2 more street turns away from giving out. KKID. If you don't step and give me HAT, I will call the police. The man, who was just 20 meters away from him, could barely word out his threat cohesively as his throat sounded like it was cracking from wheezing and puffing. He slowed down and clutched his chest, trying to catch as much air as he could. Issei couldn't keep running, but if he stopped right now, he was as good as dead. If this guy doesn't kill me, my mom will. And that thought alone flooded him with greater dread than any scenario where he went to jail. Super spy agent Ragnarok could deal with any problem, but that demon empress was a beast surpassing the concept of resistance. He slowed down as well, remembering some of Dad's old professional swimmers' magazines about how to control one's breathing, and measured his breaths to balance his heartbeat. All the while, he frantically looked around. His eyes lit when he spotted a different turn, slightly curved behind a tall residence fence well, making it almost invisible, and immediately changed trajectory upon reaching it. He found a large bush that had grown on the other side of that fence, and dived as far as he could behind it, bringing his knees close to his chest and stifling his breathing. Thankfully, by the time the man passed by that turn, Kumo and the girl must have rounded another corner, because he cursed and kept running in their direction. Sorry, Kumo, but a spy has to adapt and improvise. I'll find you in a bit, don't worry. Anxious questions and what-ifs swirled in his mind, but Issei tried ignoring them. A spy is focused on the present problems and on how to find solutions. He was worried for Kumo, yes, and what the punishment at home will be if he not only got home late, but got there alone. The fiery demoness might just reach her supernova state and explode the town. No. It was okay. It was going to be fine. He just needed to approach this at a new angle, just like Mr. Ozawa had told him spies do when faced with insurmountable odds against them. He will break through, get his dog, and secure his trilby hat. As for the girl, I have no idea who she is or what she's doing, but if Kumo was so one-edge about her immediately, then she must be a bad guy. Arg, but I need more info. He sighed, slumping back against the tall white fence wall, and pondered over what to do. First, he needed to figure out where the girl was heading. Everything else would fall into place after that. He scrunched his nose in a grimace, furrowed his brows and tapped his forehead with a finger. Okay, so let's go back a bit. Mr. Ozawa always said a great spy re-examines established facts and layouts to retrace steps and find weaknesses. Right, Oxo, I was going to take Kumo to Ko Park, which is east of my home. But that girl was running the opposite direction, so to the west. Sweat beads poured down as he concentrated, his neurons firing off. He wasn't the smartest, had the best memory nor the best intuition, but what he did have was determination. And right now he was fully determined to predict where the 3 runners were heading to. He felt his brain sizzling, firing up like a rev engine, as a new brain power unlocked. He remembered an ability Mr. Ozawa had told him about. Great spies are able to recognize and retrace steps to predict something. But the greatest spies will do that down to the tiniest detail. Mosaic hyperpattern vision. It was like he was forcefully opening his mind's eye. He traced faint memories of a map of Ko and zeroed in on the neighborhood that was west of his street, marking any nearby crucial landmarks he had glanced at. Then, he did his best to go over the pattern of turns and movements the girl exuded, which was easier to remember since he had memories of 3 others following that path: Kumo, himself, and the random guy that chased after him. But that wasn't enough. His brows furrowed deeper and he scowled, pushing his 10-year-old brain to its limit as he focused on the streets he had zapped past in a hurry. Signs with names of these streets he had also glanced at for the briefest moments. The names were hard to discern, but he remembered streets with the same order of letters as those signs. The compass moved across the map, highlighting the places he was sure they had passed, going up and up, until, aha, I got it! A spark like the Big Bang. The lattice of the mosaic vision collapsed as he found his answer. He knew where the girl was likely heading. And he knew the shortcuts to that location. He grinned. The street he was on right now led directly to those roundabout shortcuts. He got up and started booking it. Go panted, then cursed, stopping to catch his breath, inhaling as much of the sweet oxygen around him as he could, before resuming his run, which by now had been reduced to a hefty jog, making him look ridiculous. No doubt like an aging grandpa on a marathon, about to crap his pants all over the pavement, if the way his arms flailed was any indication how uncoordinated his limbs were from sheer exhaustion. If I knew I shouldn't have ate those donuts last night, I should have just taken Yuichiro's advice and exerco Godside Stitch. Ag hag hag. He doubled over and nearly fell on his knees, just as he made the turn to follow the shade of that damned runaway. Or maybe his doggo wasn't even sure anymore, but he stopped caring by the time they crossed the Shukyu crossing. Gah, if only that second Broly movie wasn't a flop, I'd be paying a hot maid to carry me right now. His fingers grasped the collared shirt on his side, where the painful spasms of the diaphragm caused by his excessive running were just having a drumbeat concert with his nerves and tendons. He hadn't run like that since the Ko Academy track competition of 1992. Sure, he won a bronze medal. If he didn't, his parents basically threatened to cut any funds for his tuition, or the new IBM ThinkPad 700. But his lungs lost all their air and his heart almost lost the strength to pump blood. He wasn't obese or even overweight, he was quite thin in fact, but having a coffee-based diet day and night while working as a part-time producer, part-time real estate agent didn't exactly help his athleticism. Good thing I know the general layout in this suburban stuck-up neighborhood. He allowed himself a hoarse chuckle and a faint smile. He looked up to take in the familiar pink scenery. The Mayakan Sakura Park. With its distinguished landmark, that damned dilapidated tax fund dump eyesore, the Aminominaki Shrine, propped up on a small hill that connected this part of town to the forested rural area of the northwest outskirts of Ko Town. The Forest of 100 Screams, as the superstitious elderly locals of the area called it, for it is said the spirits of the scorned men and women wander there, haunting, taking new souls with them to the depths of hell to nourish their animosity. Yeah, right. And Ki and Super Science were real. He always had half a mind to go there and burn the damn forest. Maybe make a contract, and put some condos up for sale. Just to show the old has-beens how stupid they sound. That aside, he was here. He had an inkling the girl whom the dog was chasing, whom that little thieving was chasing, were all going to converge here. Now why that girl led all of them here, he didn't know and he didn't care. He just wanted his hat back and to slap some sense into that unruly boy. He dusted himself off and ran inside the park, towards the shrine, where he felt the girl was truly heading. There was no rational reasoning, just an intuition. Woof! Woof! It didn't take long for him to pick up on the sounds of barking a good 50 meters away. He whipped his head in the direction of the sound and saw them. A girl and a dog. No boy, though. He furrowed his brows suspiciously. Maybe he's Hidinga, forget it, I'll just go check. Gotta make sure that dog won't maul no longer girls either. He took in a good amount of air and sprinted towards the little clearing near the Central Park Pond, Pink Petal Pond, PPP for short, though nowadays that abbreviation apparently carried a hilariously juvenile meaning, his brother said. Roof! Woof! Woof! That strange colored mutt that had bumped into him earlier. If it attacked the girl, he'd have a good excuse to give it a good kick in the... Though that fur, had he been a greedier man, he'd planned to skin the dog and sell the fur. A snow white and navy blue fur that had seemingly bioluminescent properties. That would sell harder on the market than all of Toei's Dragon Ball Z movie DVDs combined. But wasn't his mother, the gold-digging CNT? He'd just leave all three of his assailants with a slap on the wrist. As he was focusing on the dog and as he encroached closer to their location, he saw clearly that the dog was growling at the girl, trying to corner her. Its features were twisted into an angered snarl, its claws digging at dirt as it barked and snapped its teeth in the air, trying to scare the girl. "Don't come any closer, Inuyama, please. Stay there and just let me go." Great, another night and another dog attack. Guess I'll be playing hero here. With a resigned frown, he passed the tree that bordered the clearing and was ready to make a wild dash at the dog and kick it before it could pounce on the little girl. "Don't make me hurt you, Inuyama, please," the girl stammered out, her voice meek and pathetic, like a flower that could be blown by the slightest breeze. Yet a part of it carried a heavy edge that made Go pause and lean on the tree with one hand. "Hurt what does she?" "Roof!" The dog sprung up and went for a bite, her skirt. It wasn't aiming for a vital spot. But just then, Go saw something he couldn't believe a human being could do. The girl literally vanished out of thin air, showing up next to the dog in a stance reminiscent of something like a martial artist and a ballerina, before spinning and delivering a blow he couldn't see. The dog whined in pain and got sent a whole basketball field distance away. Wait, what? What just happened? What did the girl hit the damn mutt with? Her leg? Her arms? Some invisible mutant limb? The air? And how did she move so fast? Did she counter the attack? Was he seeing things because he got so exhausted? Those questions ran through Go's mind like waves crashing against rock. It was straight up a scene out of a Dragon Ball episode. But how? Grrrr. Roof. He blinked. The dog was flying in again. What the hell? It got punted like 30 meters away. And it barely seemed hurt. Was this some kind of military robot dog drone? Please, Inuyama-san, I mean no harm, I am just here to get something. Something my family owns. The girl flash-stepped with that impossible agility again, evading each leap from the mystic mutt like she was a butterfly, basically dancing around it. She seemed barely inconvenienced, and more concerned with her inability to de-escalate the situation. Go stood stunned into silence, practically propping himself on the tree at this point not to collapse from a potential aneurysm. How in the Christ-loving is a girl no older than my niece moving like she's blessed by Kenshiro? Is she on something? Is she one of those genetically gifted monsters? But no, wait. That dog is also extraordinary. It doesn't seem to tire out either. What is going on? Either he was hallucinating or he had hit his head on a street lamp and was hallucinating. There was just no way he could comprehend a little girl no older than 11 maneuvering a wild animal like a protagonist to one of the anime he would be a director for. Admitting what he was seeing was real was tantamount to rejecting his worldviews, which was that magic of any sort was impossible. His mental tirade of awed and baffled stupefaction was cut off as he felt the air shift as the mystical mutt's fur suddenly glowed against the shadows of the trees and its body appeared to take on a mist-like property, like its chemical composition was changing to that of vapor. It then lunged at the girl again, this time so swift he barely followed its movements. The girl, for the first time perhaps, winced and tensed a little. This one must have felt like an actual threat to her life. Brat, run! The girl vanished again, and before Go could comprehend what had happened, he saw flashes of light, something like water glowing faintly, and then the dog fell unconscious. The girl caught it and let it rest gently on the ground. As for her, she was absolutely unscathed. Go blinked. Nope, the girl and the unconscious dog were still there. He blinked again. And again. No matter how many times he blinked, the reality didn't change. Oh yeah, I am gonna need to stop with the coffee and maybe check myself for early schizophrenia, because what the hell did I just witness? Oh, and little did poor him know that wouldn't be the last crazy thing he would see that day. The girl patted the dog's fur gently, a sad sympathetic expression on her face. I'm sorry, Inuyama-san, I know you were just protecting your contractor, but I really need to get that thing. The girl spoke, stammering, still heavy in her melodic soft voice, whose only flaw was a little strain, like she was too anxious to even speak. Go mumbled out, and then face-bombed. He saw her jolt up with a deer in the headlights expression, before narrowing her eyes and looking around, crouching low. It was like two different people, a shy girl with doe-eyed mo expressions and then a predator, used to hunting in unknown territory. Go gulped. Is she looking if anyone else followed her? She was, because after a few seconds of scanning the area, she sighed and focused back on Go. She stood back up and started walking towards the man. I'm sorry if I've inconvenienced you, sir. And I'm sorry you had to see all of that. She bowed to him politely, before resuming her approach. There was something almost uncanny about her now. He felt a strange energy. Like she was planning to pull some inconceivable inhuman maneuver on him, too. Hey listen, kid, I don't want any problems with you, okay? He took a step back, almost stumbling into a rock, but thankfully avoiding it barely. I'm just here to get my hat back. A boy should be around here, your age. He was running after you, but his explanation fell on deaf ears. The girl was taking one delicate step after the next without stopping. She wore the same sad, wistful expression as she did when she rested the unconscious dog down. I'm sorry, sir, I have to erase what you saw. It is family law, so please, don't make this harder. The girl said. It wasn't a threat, didn't feel like one. And she sounded so pitifully awkward. But at the same time, he saw what she did to that dog. If she could do that, who knows what she could do to him, a non-athletic chump who couldn't even run 1 mile without nearly dying of a heart attack. Issei, he felt a fallen branch with his foot, and grabbed it, hands shaking as he tried not to break eye contact with the creepy super ninja girl. He swung the branch in the air. Stay back, I'm warning you. The girl's expression became a tad sadder, like she had given up on negotiations, and the air around her swirled. She's coming, she's gonna knock me out, too. I'm going to end up like some early Dragon Ball villain beaten half to death by some tiny murder-happy kid. And I can't do a thing about. Go closed his eyes, hoping perhaps he'd open them again, and this horrible hallucination disperse like every sleep-deprived morning vision of death he had. But a hit never came, even the air was calmer. His body relaxed a little and he trepidly opened his eyes to see the girl staring at the west entrance of the Sakura Park. It was the entrance closest to the clearing they were at. Why is she just gazing there? The only thing that's there is the old biker stunt ramp that nobody bothered to fix. Because the administration is too lazy to. What do I care, this is my chance. But just as Go turned to bolt away from that hellish purple ninja spawn, he heard engines. The distant echo of engines being revved aggressively, almost violently, like the driver cared little for the integrity of the mechanism, but it didn't sound powerful like a Kawasaki or a Yamaha model. He'd heard those. His niece was a real biker nut, and just gushed every time she heard the roar of a Yamaha. It sounded more like why he heard a scream slicing through the wind. Definitely a boy's. Definitely fast. Definitely sounding like a moped revving through a tornado. Wait, that voice, that sounds like. But before he could finish his thought, the suspect himself made his own entrance in a fashion that was so mad, so insane, it washed everything else Go had seen in terms of insanity. Perched up on the seat of an old motope model, with a nitro bottle haphazardly fastened to the back of the frame tubing with worn hemp rope and with something white stuffed inside an old green military bag the little dumbs had slapdashly put on. The hat thief screamed, which Go thought was a pretty normal reaction, probably the sanest thing anyone has done today. SHT, even he screamed. Wahawawayut? Dear Kurukami, the mysterious ninja girl also muttered quietly. Go was glad he could find something to relate to with this Terminator of a girl. It all happened so fast. Go was sure if he said it was a scene from a Michael Bay movie, everyone would believe him. Only the explosions were missing, really. The moped reached a heroic altitude of 40 or 50 feet, then plummeted like a soda can off a roof. Just as Go began composing his will in his head, the kid did the unthinkable. He leapt off, whipped out a custom parachute cobbled together from old blankets, ripped curtains, and sheer luck. Somewhere in the world, a tailor wept. Somehow, he glided to safety like a drunken eagle. Both Go and the T-800 ninja girl were too flabbergasted to notice the kid's impeccable landing calculations. Mayday, mayday! Screamed the boy with all his lungs, and Go was pretty sure an old war vet would get PTSD if they heard this. Both Go and the purple ninja T-800 girl were too flabbergasted to notice that the kid had somehow calculated his fall to be right. Wait, Nas he, dear mother of God, you little SHI? Thump! On top of him. Dossier number 3. Turtle hunt record too. Here you go, kid, as you requested. Some hemp rope, about 12 meters of the turtle. Why do you call it a turtle? Issei asked, raising a curious brow at the man, which was met with an irked scoff. Because a hemp rope properly secured is as tough as a turtle shell. Now quit with the questions. The man answered roughly. Okay. Issei conceded with a slightly lowered tone. The man rummaged almost wearily through the large bag he'd collected the assortment of items Issei had asked him to bring, fishing them out one by one. Right, a mother load of hemp rope, half the damn blankets the man owned, denim needles and a bunch of paracorderite. Anything else, kiddo? The man asked, rolling up and folding the bag into roughly the size of an apple in his hand. Yes, can you give me the fob for the beauty over there, Mr. Collins? Issei asked, eagerly pointing at the Kawasaki Tomcat CX-10, which had custom reconfigurations and modifications on the engine parts, clearly the result of a skilled mechanic tinkering with the machine. Issei had picked up the habit of calling the motorcycle Mr. Ozawa owned a beauty from watching Yusaku Matsuda in action. The fedora-donning actor truly was Issei's personal James Bond inspiration. Issei looked expectantly at the man, who was looking back and forth between him and the motorcycle in utter confusion. Collins was a relatively tall, average-looking man with the exception of a somewhat muscular figure, long unkempt brown hair, trashily trimmed beard and camo pants. The Tomcat? That old beast? Straussen finally spoke, his eyes locking onto Issei for an instant, before he let out a humorless laugh and slapped his knee. Kid, on a scale of 1 to infinity, I think you broke the crazy scale. You expect me to let you drive that thing when you're barely out of your diapers? If you don't, I'll show the police you've been breaking into the house that I technically own. What the hell are you talking about, brat? Issei smirked. The trap was set, time to spring up his secret weapon. He pulled out a photograph and waved it in front of Straussen. The man eyed it suspiciously, his eyes tracing the back of the photograph as his expression became ever more anxious. Give me that! He growled as he snatched the photo from Issei, who showed no resistance, as if Straussen had done exactly as he anticipated. Straussen's face went a bit pale and his eyes widened as he realized the contents of the photo. What is when? How did you? A spy never reveals his tricks, Mr. Collins. Issei said with his best noir detective impression, tipping the trilby hat that fate had gifted him earlier. TCH, damn kid, you're not a real ING spy, get it through your head. You don't even know the first thing about being one. And the hell are you tipping that $50 Costco fedora at me for? It's either fake, from the trash, or stolen. Straussen berated Issei, his face almost red with anger. It was as if Issei's very play pretend insulted his existence. Issei faltered a little and, showcasing his own anger at Straussen's accusation, snatched the photo back and stomped his foot, puffing his chest out, trying to appear as manly as possible. Why, no, it's not stolen. It was given to me by fate? What a bunch of Disneyland baloney. Stop living in your little comics and face reality, you little clown. Go around acting like a tough guy and you'll end up hurting not only yourself but your poor parents, too. Straussen snapped at Issei and to the boy. His face appeared almost demonic, a great shadow cast over his features. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. I didn't steal anything. Issei screamed back at him at the top of his lungs, wishing the man just disappear or at least stop telling him these nasty lies. Mom and Dad will never get hurt, as long as I and Kumo are there. Okay, Jesus, kid, calm down. The man shushed Issei with a finger and knelt down to his level to whisper, looking observantly around to make sure nobody had heard the little brat. Don't be waking up the entire neighborhood, someone's going to hear you and think I'm involved in a robbery while roping in a minor. So you'll give me the fob? Issei sniveled a bit, on the cusp of tears. The man's words had cut deeper than Straussen had realized. Yes, I will. Straussen sighed, relenting to the whiny little demon and going round back into a room. After a minute he returned with the long-awaited fob in one hand and a few safety equipment for motorcyclists, like a body vest. But you ain't going nowhere without these first. But I want to feel the wind breezing through my shirt, as I eat through a straw for the next 3 months after crashing the bike. Like I said, you ain't going nowhere without putting these on. Straussen punctuated each word and syllable, pushing the equipment into Issei's hands and monitoring him to make sure he's got it on. Listen, brat, I don't know what you're doing, where you'll be doing or even how, but if you're going to go on some crazy adventure, at least make sure you're well protected. Issei was silent. Guess Kenzo didn't teach you that when he had you wrapped around his finger with those fake stories, huh? Straussen sighed defeatedly and rubbed the back of his head. You're going to have to stop living in these fantasies one day, brat. Being a spy ain't action sets and bangin' babes. You're a jerk, Mr. Collins. I don't know how Mr. Ozawa was ever friends with you. Straussen paused at that, his face going blank, and Issei involuntarily trembled, fearing he'd incited his ire again. But to his surprise, the man just barked with laughter. You know, that's a mystery I haven't answered myself either, haha. Never got along with that guy much. But I guess it's because we go way back in Central America. He wiped a small tear from his eye and exhaled whimsically as if he hadn't had a good laugh in a while. Ah, whatever, you'll understand what I mean soon. He tossed the fob at Issei after the boy was done putting on the helmet, and turned around. Oh, and if you want to blackmail someone, don't show them your only evidence, and make sure to have hundreds of copies. Straussen turned to look at Issei from over his shoulder and smirked, waving the photo mockingly. He stuck his tongue out. Like taking candy from a baby. Gururi-an. He had practiced this on his mom's laundry dozens of times. Too many times for his mother's patience, just enough to master the procedure. Lay out the blanket and cut it into a circle, after which he reinforced the rim by folding the edge over once and sewing a simple hem using the denim needles and some of the hemp thread. Next came the attachment of the suspension lines, remembering to cut the power cord into 8 segments. The next sequence was the trickiest part to get down. He had to space them evenly across the rim, tie them securely through reinforced points of the blanket and hemp rope, composing all of it into a strong knot at a central point. Finally, with the rest of the hemp rope, he made a haphazard harness, looping it around his armpits and in shape and fastening it to the central suspension knot. He also tied the trilby hat with a bit of the rope to secure it to his head so it wouldn't fly off. He wouldn't have his gift from fate getting carried away to some other less deserving kid. All right, now to do a little test, Issei said, and did a few high jumps. The harness stayed secure as a lock. It was looser than a real one, but that was okay. He didn't need something perfect, just enough to succeed in his super special surprise attack to catch that mysterious girl and the mean adult unawares. Mr. Ozawa, I wish you were here to see me. He felt a pang in his chest as the memory of a wrinkled old smile and kind attentive eyes flashed in his mind briefly before he pushed it away. He smiled, stuffed the blanket paraquat sloppily in his bag, got on the moped, turned the fob and laughed as he heard the engine roar. Easy, girl, easy. He patted the rear of the moped as if it was a horse, squeezing in the brake lever just like he read in those old-school biker race magazines his dad kept from his teenage years. Positioning himself in a way his small lithe body could steer the machine while riding was already tricky. He didn't want to fly off it, too. There. After he found the right position, he retraced his memories again. He looked on ahead towards a curved turn at the end of the street which ascended to an elevated hill-like part of this neighborhood. And just over that peak was the Sakura Park. He gulped. He'd have to be at top velocity, like those old Golden Age motocross bikers who used the old takeoff platform on the northwestern entrance of the Sakura Park to perform the craziest daredevil stunts. They don't make motocross highlights like they used to. They're watering it down for the new generations. Why, back in my day, Issei smirked, despite his nervousness. He would always tune out his father when he got started about his bike and motocross obsessions. But he was thankful. He learned a lot about the mechanisms of these scary bi-wheeled machines from his dad. He checked if everything was in place again and revved the moped back to life, barely suppressing a scream as he accelerated through the streets and up the uphill turn. When he reached the top, Issei felt as if he would soil himself just from the scenery. Although he could see the entire east side of Town and all the familiar streets connecting a neat, if slightly randomized network, he was still staring down at a steep slope. He gulped as he looked down towards the Sakura Park, right at the western entrance, and more specifically the old decrepit, disgustingly huge ramp which was used for those lethal motocross stunts. A great spy laughs in the face of dead hand pulls through. He rehearsed the words Mr. Ozawa had spoken to him when describing the nature of true, top-tier spies and sped up the moped further. It didn't take long for the moped to descend at terminal velocity, or for Issei to start screaming. It took every ounce of strength and bravery in his little body not to let go of the handlebars of the moped. Not yet, not yet, not yet. The wind was whipping him, making it hard to keep his eyes open, but he managed to not veer off just long enough to reach that huge terrifying ramp at the western entrance to the Sakura Park. He pushed the moped to its limit, and flew off the ramp, reaching so high he felt like he would hit a cloud. Ea. All he could do was scream. He looked below and his soul exclaimed in sanctified joy. Yes! The great Dragnarok's mind succeeds again. It was just as he had predicted with his mosaic vision. All the pieces aligned with near perfection. Though there were a few instances while preparing for his grand entrance where he doubted the validity of this higher logical thinking Mr. Ozawa taught him. But he had no time to think. He knew the moped would slam into the ground and likely kill him. His childish mind couldn't understand the physics of it, but he knew instinctively. That is where the makeshift parachute came in. He jumped off the moped just as it lost momentum, and with a maneuver he had rehearsed 10,000 times over in his mind, dreams and from his parents' couch, he swung the bag and released the blanket hemp parachute, letting the makeshift harness jerk him as air punched at him again. His fall snapped into a fast but gradual descent, and with a botched attempt to steer the thing, he landed squarely on top of the man that had chased him. Gah! He howled in pain as Issei's full weight slammed down onto him, effectively toppling him to the ground. Issei briefly winced in sympathy and wondered if he should check on the man, but the second his eyes landed on the girl and his unconscious dog next to her, he only had one mission on his mind. Wait. It's not what the girl stammered out after realizing how the situation must have looked like to the boy. Kyumo, no! Gur, I will stop you, agent of the evil Diablo organization. Ra! Issei charged with seemingly reckless abandon, all traces of tactics seemingly ditched for righteous self-deluded fury. But that is what the young spy wanted her to think. At the last second, he feinted and did a dramatic spin into a throw, hitting her with one of his impromptu floor smoke bombs. Please just listen, Tone, the timid girl barely said through coughs and sneezes as she breathed in flour particles. She moved her hands in strange patterns and spoke words he barely understood. Her body began to glow. Whoa, this must be the evil organization's new light technology. Even Goldfinger didn't have that. Issei, not waiting to see what effect the light-altering technology the girl was using would have, jumped and did his best to drop-kick her. His feet slammed into her chest and she flew, stumbling and rolling on the ground a few feet away. Ow! She cried out. Yow! Issei hissed similarly as he fell on the ground, as well. If he hadn't caught himself with his hands he was pretty sure he'd have gotten a light concussion. Even then, his arms now hurt like hell from taking the brunt. It looked so easy in the comics. Issei jolted up and got off his feet clumsily, hurrying to make sure the evil agent was fully neutralized. The girl was still recovering, though she seemed more confused than in pain. This was his chance. Smack! A loud smack reverberated across the park and it took Issei a second to realize it was his cheek that was hit. A second later, the itchy stingy feeling set in. And by the time he landed on his butt, the pain fully arose. It stung as hard as when his mother would slap him for crossing a line and messing up real bad. Wah! You little, that ought to teach you some damn manners. Go! The man whose precious trilby hat was the only thing on his mind right now, loomed over Issei with a fierce, almost maddened glare. He looked like a man devolving from humanity. Not only are you a thief, you're a goddamn menace to society. I mean, speeding through with the ing moped, jumping off that old ramp and crashing in the middle of the park. Did your mom drop you on your head when you were born or waithaha? Maybe the stupidity is ing genetic. Issei shivered, never having been berated so harshly by an adult before. Even Mr. Colin and his mother's chiding and angry yelling paled in comparison to this. He wasn't even shouting that much, nor was the man as physically imposing as either Mr. Colin or his mom. It was the sheer nastiness in the words and his glare that creeped and shook Issei to his core. He gained a moment of boldness born from primal anger when he started insulting his mom. Don't talk about my mom like the. I can say whatever I damn well please, you brat. He growled at Issei and stepped forward, immediately cowing the boy. That woman ought to be assumed. You're lucky she's not here to see me rip your whole family a new one. And Mr. That's enough. The silver-haired girl tried de-escalating the situation, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. She stood from the side, unsure of what to do. You're evil, stop saying mean things about my mom. Shut up. And give me that. Go cut him off again, his patience practically non-existent at this point as he harshly snatched the trilby hat off Issei's head, snapping the small cord holding it, and making Issei yelp in pain. With a hum of relief and a smirk of snobbish satisfaction, Go put his beloved premium hat on and glared back with disgust at Issei, who was now on the verge of tears. I won't tell your dear mama and I won't call the cops. But just so you'll think twice before stealing from others, he grabbed his wrist roughly, enough to leave prints, and raised his hand, his face twisting into his earlier furious scowl as he prepared to slap the daylights out of the trembling boy. I'll teach your misbehaving a lesson your daddy never gave you. Issei winced, closing his eyes and silently crying out for his mom. But the sharp pain never came. His cheek didn't feel another burning sting. Instead, the air rippled as something moved between him and the man. Huh? Issei sniveled out. When he opened his eyes, the girl, the assumed evil agent, was standing in front of him, guarding him while in a strange stance to which the closest reference frame Issei could think of was Jackie Chan. Go had been flung by something, and was now on the ground, head down and up in the air as if he had skidded across the ground. The trail of grass perfectly matching his head size suggested that much. Issei blinked. He was confused. This girl, wasn't she a bad guy? Wasn't she a secret evil agent sent to terrorize the town? That's why Kumo got bad vibes from her and chased after her. Kumo always sniffs out bad folk and was specifically aggravated by them. So why? Why did you save me? To just attacked you, Issei said, doing his best to wipe his tears and sound a little more manly, though the quivery inflection reared its head nonetheless. We're enemies. The girl's head fell down a tad, as if she was sighing in annoyance. He couldn't see her expression as she was staring dead ahead at Go, but he could sense she was furrowing her brows. We aren't enemies. To never wanted to hurt your Inagami, she came after me. And I tried explaining that, but you wouldn't listen. The girl finally answered, her voice clearing out despite the timid nature that seemed ingrained in her character. It was as if talking to Issei made her more confident. To sorta agree with him. You're insane, but that doesn't give him the right to hit you. Even once was too much. Issei's cheeks dusted with pink, the young boy feeling extremely flustered from embarrassment. His parents' words of advice about not seeing things in black and white resurging in his mind. Even Mr. Ozawa had warned him. He was so busy focusing on one aspect of the situation, he failed to consider another. I'm sorry, Mr. Ozawa, Mom and Dad. I'm not a great spy, yet he was dumb. I am sorry, but before he could finish his honest apology, Go was on his face, spitting out grass and doing his best to dust himself off, almost scratching at his office attire to get every piece of dirt and foliage off himself. You stupid ill-bred grata. You little brat, do you know how much this suit will cost the company? It's gonna come at my expense. Please calm down, sir. I don't want anyone else getting hurt. WWE should talk things out. Issei's silver-haired protector spoke, her voice never losing its kindness and timidness, though there was an unmistakable edge to it now. The stay put or get put down kind. Go spat and rolled up his one sleeve, clenching his fist and stepping forward, his face dark with rage and utter resentment. You know what, I don't care if you're some special ops ninja trained in the art of ninjutsu or whatever, I will teach you both a lesson to remember. I'm going to beat you both blue unless I get an apology for everything. Issei shuddered despite himself. He hated that weakness and queasiness inside, but this was the first time an adult had treated him so nastily, and actually threatened him. This was wholly different from when his mom threatened him with a sandal, or when Dad would smack him over the head. What he felt was sheer, raw anxiety and an impulsive fight or flight response. The girl, in contrast, seemed vigilant, if only a little more on edge. "Now come here, you little unruly undisciplined ing bra." But right as Go came close to them, fingers wrapped harshly around his wrist, digging in enough to draw a bit of blood, making Go freeze, his face slowly twisting from anger to unmistakable anguish. "If you're gonna bully someone, at least don't pick on kids less than half your age," a flat, sardonic feminine voice said. "Who RGWH?" Before Go could even react, he felt something slamming into his face, his nose crunching as a fist smashed into his mug, sending him flying straight into a trash bin. "In loser," the woman grumbled dryly as she flicked her wrist before putting her hand on the curve of her hip. The kids finally felt a wave of relief hit them and looked towards their mysterious savior. She was a somewhat tall and lean woman with a toned, curvaceous figure and fair skin. She was a very beautiful lady, around the age of 30, though her gaze held a maturity to her far beyond those years. She had dark bluish-brown hair matching her onyx eyes. Her well-endowed body was hugged by a jet-black suit that revealed the voluptuous lines. Despite being objectively attractive, that was overshadowed by the sheer chilling aura her sharp face and stifling presence exuded onto the world. Her face was scrunched up a little in a fierce glare. She had the gravitas of a kind of Yakuza mob boss, or at least the daughter of one. Issei's eyes widened, sparkling like tiny stars with recognition, and his heart fluttered with a bundle of emotions. Mainly, excitement and unbridled, sweet childish joy. "Auntie Mio!" Issei screamed in happy mirth, exploding into a run and practically slamming into the woman, who barely caught him and embraced him into a tight warm hug. As if a completely new person, her bone-chilling scowl melted into a far gentler expression. "Hey, little guy, how's my favorite spy agent doing? You still out there saving the world and?" The woman, Mio, smiled affectionately at the boy, pressing him tight against her endowed bosom and planting a nice hard kiss on his forehead before letting him breathe. Not yet, Auntie Mio, but he looked around at the mayhem they had caused around this side of the park. The moped which had conveniently crashed in the park pond, Go lying in a pile of trash, Kumo unconscious, and the several trails in the grass from all of them flying and fighting each other. He looked back at the silver-haired and a pang of guilt struck him. "To think I actually messed up bad this time, like, real bad. Sweat it or leg it, kid, how bad can it then?" Mio followed his gaze on the different localized trails of destruction the four had left, and her eyes widened, her lips puckering to let out a somewhat distraught whistle. "Yuzusiya, no, this is bad, and is Theta moped in the pond?" Issei's cheeks flushed with utter embarrassment and shock. He had completely forgotten about his transport in the midst of being verbally assaulted by Go. "You highs? Did you drive that thing?" she asked incredulously, staring back at Issei as if he were some mischievous spirit who had just burned down her home. "No," the boy sheepishly answered, his voice betraying his guilt. "Issei, I've known you since you were a little potato wrapped in a blanket, answer honestly. A spy never reveals his hook?" Go could only exclaim in complete bewilderment at this new information. A million questions circled through his mind, though Mio waited for none of those to arise. "And secondly, can a gal do her other job? Other job? What are you talking about?" Go asked, but his answer came from the source of his utmost annoyance. "Oh, Auntie, are you here for the annual Aminominaki Shrine Blessings Parade?" Issei asked, and Mio sighed with increasing exasperation. "Right on, Keto. But this year's preparations have been a bit of a biops." Mio coughed midway through her sentences, catching herself before she blurted out a favorite word of hers that her older sister had forced her to not say around little Issei. "Not until he was 16, at least, a big hassle, yeah? Why? I thought the old aunts and uncles from around here come every time to donate," Issei said, tapping his lip in thought. "Yeah, well, this year old folks' season is dry and I can't exactly go around hunting for money like it's Halloween. The temple's been in a decline for decades, but it's especially bad these last few years, especially after that incident in Co Park." The three main players in the bickering game went deathly silent, as if the shadow of the Grim Reaper had briefly passed through them, and none knew what response to utter. Jen was the only one unaffected by the dread the mentioned incident brought. Incident? She asked innocently. She's talking about the bloody Christmas tree incident. It was one of the most violent killings we've had in this country in maybe 10 years. Go answered her, regarding someone with some composure for the first time in the whole day. Then he cursed and mumbled. "Ing psychopath, the guy who did that." Jen nodded and put a finger on her lip, losing herself in thought, probably trying to recall if she'd heard about that. From the furrow in her brows, one could tell she was unfamiliar. Yeah, well, thanks to that, a whole lot of folks are a whole lot scared and have shelled themselves in their homes like goddamn turtles. Myo spoke up and then she turned to Go, who opened his mouth to speak. And before you start going on about why is the Myo Omahara on cleaning duty, I was a shrine maiden first and a kendo champion later. It's kind of family tradition. I was going to ask if you work alone, Go replied with a deadpan, though the slight blush indicated she had guessed right on the money. Well, yes, because this little guy's mom, aka my big sis, Mio replied sardonically while whipping her head at Issei, who rubbed the back of his head and smirked, is too busy running around their house trying to keep him in line. The fiery demoness is fierce, but she's yet to stop me from achieving ow. Issei whimpered a bit and reeling back a step, now rubbing his forehead, which had a comically reddened bump where his aunt had just lightly tapped him with a karate chap. But even a light tap from her was painful. Auntie Mio! Aha! No calling your mom a demoness, not in front of me, young man. Mio crossed her arms while chiding her nephew. Don't think I don't hear about your little spy escapades. The heck are you doing to get her this riled up? I only do as great spies do, Auntie. For it is my fate, as the great Dragnarok. Before he could fully initiate his spy-inspired tirade, Jen, to the joy of both Mio and Go, cut through his voice and made her presence known again. I'm sorry, but when you said turtles, it actually reminded me of my original goal. Actually, this whole thing started with a turtle me turtle, to be precise. Everyone paused and turned to look at her as if she was speaking an alien language. What are you talking about? Mio asked. Yeah, what the hell are you talking about, crazy ninja girl? Go joined in the inquiry with his far more cruder approach, who moved up beside Mio, who glared at him and stepped to the left closer to her nephew. You're telling me we've been on this goose double chase this whole ing time, because of some stupid pet? Let her explain herself, whole, or else you're really going to see why I'm a national champion. Mio growled at him when she saw the small girl almost physically shrink into herself under Go's increasing volume. The man glared back, but said nothing. He barely suppressed a growl when he spotted Issei making mocking gestures at him, but again he kept his trap shut. He didn't want another taste of a cracked noise, and he knew better than to mess with someone who trained with a 47-inch bamboo sword daily. Right, so, why Dad said too can't really tell no strangers much about it. But basically I am from an old family that has taken care of a special kind of turtle, black in color, which is kind of a family heirloom, too suppose. Jen said. You looked to be in a hurry when me and Kumo spotted you. Did you lose your turtle? Issei threw in a guess, using his intuition to construct his reasoning, which got a little smile from his aunt, impressed by the deduction. Jen nodded. Why, Wise, how did you know? She asked, her purple eyes staring into Issei's brown ones with a kind of wonder. Are you some kind of genius? Issei blushed a little from the implied compliment, and his face went even redder when his aunt nudged him with her hip and wiggled her brows. The boy coughed into his hand and struck a pose. A great spy never reveals his tricks, my lady. A great spy also doesn't announce he's a spy. You little Go's dry sarcastic voice died like a lamb caught by a wolf when Mio threw him a side glance, her dark eyes almost shimmering with the say another word and see what happens energy. That's amazing, I can learn much from you. But yes, Tsu lost the turtle. Okay, but you look distressed like my dad's kidnapped, and I have to pay his ransom levels of distressed. I get that the turtle is like a family prize pet, but to get this upset? Mio chimed in, but Issei beat Jen to the reply. You wouldn't get it, Auntie. We pet owners would die for our dear companions. I would fight anyone if they hurt Kumo. He paused when he noticed Go staring at him with an arched brow and Jen rubbing her arm. Ooh, I guess that kinda happened. Wait, oh no, Kumo. Finally remembering the whole reason he and Jen had a whole confrontation, Issei ran to where Kumo was laying on the grass. He put his head on her chest and sighed in deep relief when he heard her breathing was normal. Oh, Komoiri, okay, you're really okay. He then turned to Jen with a warm, thankful expression. You really didn't hurt her? Hurt her? Whoa, what in the heck happened? Issei, why is Kumo on the floor like me after a bad hangover, and what does she have to do with little Jen here? I can answer that. Go cut in, finally getting back the authority to speak up, this time ignoring Mio's subtle glare. The dog was sensing something on that ninja girl, and then they had a fight right there. The girl might have your talent, Mio Amahara, because I don't know how, but she not only fought off the damn mutt, but put it into this state. I'm guessing she used nerve chi point buljutsu or something, I don't know. You're talking about pressure points. And that's not how it works, you can't just put someone to sleep. But that's like the least of my concerns. Mio said, shaking her head trying to absorb the new information, and then looked at Jin, who seemed more nervous than ever. You fought off Kumo? The street bark demon? I've seen her fend off a whole pack of strays by herself one time. I'm 90% convinced she's a juvenile wolf. We don't actually know what she is, but she is cute. Issei chimed in with a mirthful chuckle and a much warmer face. Jen couldn't help but briefly share that smile, too. Her heart went a bit aflutter seeing how much love Issei held for the dog. Tu didn't want to hurt her, but she kept attacking me, so I had to neutralize her in the least painful way I know. Yeah, but how did you? I know pressure points. I've used them in my mixed martial arts training. This isn't that. Mio further inquired as to her methods, and now all eyes were on her. Jen notably got nervous when attention was fully on her, but even more than that, something seemed to hold her tongue. Like a mental barrier or some law she had been forced to follow. Tu can't talk about it. Tu, I'm sorry you all got roped in, that's all I can say. Jen said shyly, tugging on the sleeve of her intriguing yellow jacket. Well, okay, keep your secrets. But how did this charade even happen? Mio asked. It all started with, me and Kumo were just. Jen, Go and Issei all simultaneously took this as a cue to start explaining from their perspectives, which created a cacophony of overlapping sounds that quickly caused Mio a headache. She coughed and slammed her foot on the ground to get them to shut up, creating a tiny whirlwind from the force. Jesus H. Christ, not all at once, you nut jobs. This isn't an Orange Range concert. One at a time. Mio rubbed her temples as she sensed her headache was bound to increase, probably reaching its peak at her nephew's ridiculous tale, based on physical evidence in the park. Okay, Jen, since you seem to be the root cause, why don't you start? Okay, Jen nodded in agreement, and stopped tugging on her sleeve. She coughed to clear her voice, and my father and I are part of I could call it a detective agency. It's similar in function. And my father was in the middle of an operation, Tu was just going to stay at the local office he has in this town, but our turtle, Yukin Him Woo, suddenly bolted out of the office door and into the town. By the time I had noticed he was gone, I couldn't even follow a trail. Tu picked a faint trace around this region, and have just been following his steps across the streets. I am certain he went into this park before I got here, and that's around the time me and Kumo saw you. By the way, can you fix her? Issei spoke up, asking the question he wanted to ask for a while now. He rubbed his dog's fur worryingly. She's fine and yais, I can wake her up. It's just it might be preferable if we told our stories. She might be agitated and try to attack again. Don't worry, Jen, I'll protect you and calm Kumo down. It is what a great spy would do, Issei said with his typical flamboyant boyish enthusiasm. Mio smiled, glad to finally see her nephew's usual bravado back. She briefly glared at daggers at that filthy man, Go. Whatever he had said to her precious little angel, it had deeply affected Issei. She would hear him out next, if only to learn where he worked so she could get his fired. Okay, now you? She turned to go, putting a hand on her hip and regarding him with a frown. Let us hear your telltale. TCH, about time. I'm literally the victim of this circus, roped into some wild goose chase, or in this case a wild turtle chase. Go fussed, dusting his shoulders off and sending a fiery glare at Issei, who shivered for a second, before seemingly remembering he stood next to a national champion that had just minutes ago nearly broken the man's nose. That silent interaction didn't go unnoticed by Mio, who grabbed his ear and twisted. Less whining, more talkin', you slimeball. Okay, stop assaulting me, you crazed. Go demanded, recoiling after she let go of his ear. God knows he tried slapping her hand away. God knows she barely flinched. Something about the woman made his stomach feel a little queasy, but he couldn't recognize the emotions just yet. Right, so, here I was just getting out of the Toei office when, you work at Toei? Issei suddenly sprung up, eyes sparkling like stars and his little feet fidgeting wildly like he was about to explode into little hops. Did you do Dragon Ball Z? One Piece? Inuyasha? Oh no, another rabid fan. Go groaned with the exhaustion of an underpaid Japanese producer struggling to make ends meet while dealing with ridiculous people daily. Oh wait, that's exactly what he was. You're like what, 10, 12? Of course you would be. Issei, calm down, you look like you're about to jump to the moon. Mio said, putting a hand on Issei's shoulder to steady him. With how excited the boy looked, it was like someone had told him Yusaku Matsuda himself was visiting his home. Can I? He asked. No. Issei moaned in disappointment. Mio chuckled and patted his hand. The boy pouted with slightly flushed cheeks and tried moving away, but his strong aunt kept him in place and kept teasingly showing affection. I don't get it though. How is a big jerk like you making such cool anime? Issei blurted out, which got an immediate sputter from both Mio and Go, followed by a loud laugh by the former and a growl of pure anger from the latter. Pwahaha! You little, I will! But Mio's soul-piercing glare once again cowed him into submission, and he had no choice but to fuss and grind his teeth like a fussy child. He saw her fist clench, and he instinctively flinched and recoiled. Too mean, technically, I don't make anything. I'm in charge of managing and communicating with the teams, but I don't animate the scenes or do the audio and compositional effects. So you're like the guy who does nothing, but tells everyone what to do. Wow, you're lame. Issei said with a genuinely disappointed sour look on his face, and then to add further to the injury to Go's ego, he stuck his tongue out and started chanting Mr. Useless. Pfft. Mio sputtered into barely controlled laughter again, muffling herself with a hand on her mouth. If Go ground his teeth and glared any harder, his teeth would shatter and his eyes would pop like an eye-popper toy. He used every ounce of willpower not to scream or cuss the arrogant brat out. I'm one of the guys that makes sure you even get a show, and if you continue calling me useless, you won't be getting any new Dragon Ball content, dip. With the last of his patience, he barely strung out a composed reply, which felt more comfortable to squeak out as he saw Issei's face drop. Yeah, that's right. I'm the Shinran who gives you your wishes. So you better behave. Alright, enough of this. Go back to your story, Mr. Useless. Mio spoke up, her face no longer locked into a permanent glare, and instead now regarded Go with a bit of mocking amusement. Go seethed, but nonetheless complied, telling the rest of his tale. By the end, Mio just stood there, her eyes wide and her face betraying several emotions, which went from amusement to incredulity to sheer confusion, and then a shock that shattered her composure. She slowly turned to her nephew. Issei, what the did you do? Okay, let me rewind this vinyl record of chaos a bit and review what the heck went on you, Mio emphasized by pointing at each of the guilty parties responsible for wrecking a whole chunk of the Sakura Park, lost your family pet, and went around like a madwoman chasing it all across town, making Kumo agitated, which led to a whole chase sequence that somehow roped this prolific corporate hole. Am I following the plot so far? Two can't really object. Who are you calling in hole, you gorilla bye? One glare and his bravado turned meek. Yis, that's the gist of it. And that's not even mentioning whatever the hell you were doing, young man. Mio craned her neck towards her nephew, who was currently trying to fuse with Jen's back, looking anywhere but his aunt in the face. Don't look all innocent, Issei. I'm not going away if you pretend I'm not here. Why, for God's sake, how? How did you even manage to drive a whole moped up the suicide ramp? Do you even realize why it got that name? Well, you see, Mr. Collins. Oh my, of course that old, washed-up bum would let a damn child ride on a moped without any supervision. He's irresponsible enough to have plutonium in his basement. Ooh, he better pray Mio doesn't learn he's responsible, because if I don't kill him, she will. I actually agree. What the heck was that guy thinking? Go mumbled under his breath, not wanting Mio to direct her boiling anger at him, just because it was him, but also because agreeing with her openly was the last thing he wanted to do. Hey, Tuvi been reading motorcycle manuals okay? Issei interjected. I knew how to use it, and Dad constantly showed me how the stunts were done back in the day, SSO. Issei, you're 10 years old. You should be playing with toys or Legos or reading manga, not trying to recreate Hollywood action pieces. MMH, but I have been training for 2 years for a real spy mission. And when Mr. Jerk's hat landed on me, I thought it was my time to prove myself. Spoke the young boy with the sparkle of a dreamer on a mission. In spite of everything, he still believed this was an ordained test, the first call to action for his spy career. Ah yes, God told you to steal what isn't yours so you can live out your stupid fantasies. Honestly, if I was a spy and heard you calling yourself such, I'd be embarrassed, said Ghost snidely, spitting the words at him like venom. And that's exactly how they felt to the naive boy, recalling Strauss and Collins' words, making his knees quiver. You're not a real ING spy, get it through your head. Okay, calm down you, he already apologized 3 times for that. That said, I can't disagree with the sentiment. Issei, she bent her knees to be at a level with the boy who finally stopped fidgeting nervously in place to stare back at her. You're just a young boy. I know Mr. Ozawa meant a lot, but I doubt he'd want you doing any of this. Gosh, you dropped from Thurno, 40 freaking feet while speeding on a slope, on a moped no less. She shoved him into a warm embrace, hugging him tightly. It's a miracle you survived, kid. Please, please never do these stunts. Your mom would genuinely not endure losing you, too. And again with the comment Mio slid in, Strawson's words of warning came blaring in his mind. Fate? What a bunch of Disneyland balloony. Stop living in your little comics and face reality, you little clown. Go around acting like a tough guy and you'll end up hurting not only yourself, but your poor parents, too. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair at all. All these adults, they pursued what they wanted fearlessly, and no one told them peep. But the second he tries being a little bold, they treat him like a criminal. But wasn't he? By law, he had committed a myriad of crimes just in the past few hours. From stealing to severe property damages. But it was all for a noble cause, that even that was a misunderstanding. Jen Chan was merely a girl looking for her precious pet, the suit guy, although a jerk was upset, because he stole his precious hat, and he just ran based on assumptions. And he really could have gotten hurt, and his mom would be bother, and Dad they were probably worried sick he hadn't come back yet. It was already dark outside. He hiccuped and whimpered, quiet but not enough to where his aunt wouldn't be able to hear it. Issei? Mio immediately leaned forward, bringing her hands to touch his face, but he stepped back and shook his head, roughly wiping his face. He tilted his head and swayed with a quivering, graceful smile. That's right. A spy always had a mask. To cover for vulnerabilities and emotional openings. That's what Ozawa-sensei taught him. So he would don this mask, as if entering his school's theater choir, and he would fool them. Revealing his weakness was the last thing a spy ought to do. I got it, Auntie Mio. Who, is that right? Mio asked, brow arched as she put a hand on the curving dip of her hip. She didn't believe him. That was okay. A mask couldn't work without a little performance. Next time I will utilize a hook gun. And use my Dragomobile. Mio groaned and held her head in her hands, like a person dealing with a bad-mannered cute dog that they wanted to punt but couldn't morally bring themselves to do so. You haven't learned anything. Mio considered him for a moment, her face warming with a small, almost invisible smile. It was as if she was glad to see him back in his proper spirit. At least you're back to your old goofy self, you little munchkin. She pinched his cheek playfully. Auntie Mio! Issei whined, trying to slap her hand away, but failing against the strength of his affectionate aunt. Go cringed at the excessive display of affection from the side. Sure, the man had a cute niece he'd kill a person for, but this was too much. Well, if you're done doting on that little criminal. Never! was the feral reply that came from the woman. Go shivered, then stared at her with a deadpan expression, clearly having given up of making sense of the whole ordeal, before raising his hands and walking away. Right, well, good luck to you guys in finding your Houdini turtles or a moral conscience, or a mouth more befitting of a Lottie YYYGHK. But his retreat was dashed to oblivion by the heel of one Neo Amahara who had stabbed his foot with her boot, causing him great, stinging pain. And where do you think you're going, Myo asked with a sweet, innocent tone that was horrifically mismatched with her ominous smile, a dark aura surrounding her, making the man flinch. Oh, for S sake, just let me go, you damned gorilla, I'm going home. Myo's faux sweetness soured into a scorching anger at the insult, and she reared her hand back into a diamond-hard fist. What did you just call me, you? But her fist never reached his face as it was deflected by the gentle palms of Jen, the little girl performing as little as a gentle whip of her wrists to redirect her strike. Jen-chan? But why? Please, Miss Myo, no more fighting. Jen stood her ground, getting in between the nerve-racked Go, who looked like he would need new pants soon, and the scowling she-beast. Myo considered her for a second. Though the woman had just met Jen, she already had made quite an impression on her. The girl was adorably cute and cuddly-looking, with a shy persona that was both pitiful and endearing. And yet whenever things began to escalate she calmed the waters with but a sway. And despite her constant stuttering, her voice had an edge of resolution equal to Myo's. She's like an unrefined blade made of water, thought Myo, before sighing and relenting. Fine. I won't hit the lowlife, subhuman stain. Subhuman? Go managed out an incredulous retort, parroting the insult as if someone had called him a racial slur. She glared at him and pointed at his solar plexus, imagining how sweetly his ribs would crack if she hit him with her fists. That doesn't mean you're forgiven or off the hook for hitting my nephew and being an absolute prick. Are you serious? I literally had nothing to do with this before your little angel stole my hat. I'm the victim, Go argued, pointing at Issei. Tu said I'm sorry already, dude. And you got it back anyways. Issei exclaimed, throwing his hands up in an almost exasperated manner. Go rubbed his temples, then grit his teeth and stomped. It's about the principle, you little. Go retorted before he squealed as he realized the sin he just committed in front of his woodbeerbitter. Oh, you're so dead. I told you to stop being rude to. Stop. Jen cut in again and raised both hands, a faint, nigh invisible misty curl releasing from her body and swaying their thoughts, inducing strange calmness. Her voice was even more resolute, and this time she managed a quivering glare. Enough with the fighting already. To him, the one responsible. So if you want to attack someone, attack me. Jen-chan. Kid. Jen turned to Myo and her expression softened. Miss Myo, if Mr. Go helps me retrieve my turtle, would you forgive him? She asked the older woman, who could only keep her rage for so long until the adorable dazzle of the shy girl calmed her waters down, and she let out a heavy sigh. Fine, I'll let the little leech keep his head and balls. Why my balls? Go exclaimed, though remained ultimately ignored. But he has to be quiet and stop attacking Issei. Jen nodded and turned toward the aforementioned man, who was fidgeting a bit. Mr. Go, to understand Issei wronged you and you got roped into MMY mess. But please, do us this one favor and you'll be free to go. Jen pleaded with him, grasping his hand with her smaller palms. The gesture surprised Go, and he was about to slap her hand away and lecture her for touching him without consent. But then he looked into her eyes and saw a vision of his sweet niece, gentle and innocent like this very girl, and his stingy instincts relented. Fine. I'll help you find that damn magically vanishing turtle. Just as long as he stopped himself before uttering the insult he had in store for the woman, balling one fist with an evil smile in front of him. And Miss Myo here promises to not punch me. Myo, amused, crossed her arms. Humph, I made all the promises I needed to make. It's your turn now. Griao. But if you're a good boy, maybe you'll just go with a slap on the wrist, Myo said, her tone almost gaining a playful inflection as she tilted her head. Though she hadn't yet realized it herself, teasing this worm of a man had gotten kind of fun. Go Mamazono stared back at her with concern and fear as if she were a snake, and he a mice she was toying with. Are you hitting on me? Now that shook the sharp tigress out of her terrifying confidence. Wah! You, Auntie Mio, that's gross, Issei said, making gag sounds and cringing. A blush crept up her face and Mio waved her hands and formed an X with them to emphasize her denial of any feelings, alleged or otherwise. Ah no, Issei, that's not it. Please, I don't want to get dragged to the gorilla den. I'm not ready to be King Kong's brother-in-law. King? Oh, that's it. I'm ripping your freaking your jaw off, you damned lizard. You're not using that mouth for anything good anyways. No, please, Jen exclaimed with a wavering shout. And so they went back and forth and back for a few more minutes before the only voice of reason among the group, that being the mystical girl Jen, finally pacified them. In the end, they agreed to keep a distance of 10 feet from each other so they wouldn't get into more fights. Mio Amahara would walk with Issei and Go Mamazono would be with Jen. Wait, what about the dog? Go asked, suddenly pausing in his step. Everyone exchanged a look in awkward silence. Oh my God, Kumo! Issei ran back to his still slumbering dog. Jen-chan, you said you could wake her up. Yes, just promise to hold her back. She might see me as a threat and attack me. That silver pooch is nothing but trouble, Al. Go groaned in hoarse pain as Mio slammed her elbow into his ribs, before she trotted up to the two kids and the dog. She grasped the back of Kumo's neck and gave Jen a thumbs up. I got her, Jen-chan, don't worry. As long as I have my hands on her, she won't even move an inch. Okay, then here I go. Jen uttered a fast mumble, the sounds blending into each other like a formless, incoherent spitboxing, but Mio recognized some of the vowels. The girl was reciting some Buddhist chant in seconds. Then she rubbed her hands, spoke a name of a Buddhist figure, and tapped Kumo's forehead 3 times. Silence permeated the scene before Kumo began stirring awake, twitching and stretching slowly like a teen waking from a bad hangover. Ahaha! Jen-chan, you did it, you really didn't hurt her and you woke her back up. Issei exclaimed with pure joy, his eyes nearly tearing with relief at the sight of his dog, burying his face in its fluffy fur and hugging it tight. Mio and Jen gazed at him with an "ah, how cute" expression, while Go rolled his eyes in disgust. Kumo looked around, blinking awake. She saw, or rather felt her owner on her, and she barked happily, sniffing and licking his face. Happy to see you too, girl, you gave me quite the runaround. Roof! The dog barked, as if replying, speak for yourself, I was scared you'd gotten lost, dingus. Haha, I didn't get lost, I took a shortcut. Issei said, knowing his dog so intuitively by now they almost communicated telepathically. For his troubles he received another series of licks, causing him to giggle. Okay, I got it, you can stop. Kumo licked him a few times just to show some pettiness, and her head slowly turned toward General. The dog's expression went from warm and loving to cold and feral so fast it even had Mio shook, who immediately tightened her grip. Kumo, no! Issei cried, but it was too late. Growling WROF. Kumo snarled as if crying you, and immediately went to leap and bite at the girl, baring her fangs at her, the motion so sudden Jen yelped and stumbled back. Go got in between them, guarding Jen with his frame. Hold it there, Daddy, protect her, I got her. Mio teased as despite Kumo's utter ferocity, the dog held no candle to the grip of a professional kenjutsu practitioner. It took her a few seconds to realize something was pinching her neck, hard, and she was leaping but not moving. But just to make her quiet down, Mio got her attention with a feral snarl of her own. Kumo, sit. Kumo perked her ears up and turned her head, and her growls and snarls turned into frightened whimpers as she realized the person prevented her from leaping at the little girl. It was a wolf-like beast Kumo sometimes saw arriving at her abode. A creature more feral and scary than anything else Kumo had seen. To Kumo, there was her master whom she loved, and then there were the 2 alphas of the animal kingdom, her master's mother and her master's aunt. Kumo lowered her head in reverence and slackened in the monster's grip, prostrating herself on the ground, submitting to the alpha beast. Mio held her sharp domineering stare for a few seconds, making sure Kumo would not immediately spring into action, letting the dog's wild energy dissipate. Kumo was now fully laying on her belly. Good girl, Kumo. Mio chirped, her features softening as she let go of her neck and rubbed her fur with affection. Kumo whined and licked her hand. It wasn't an excited lick, like with Issei, but more of an appreciation of being shown mercy. Jen spoke up and Kumo's ears perked up again. Though she didn't spring into action, her teeth bared again in a low snarl until her master, her beloved human, stroked her chin and kissed her ear, melting her anger. Kumo, it's okay, she's a friend. Issei spoke and looked toward General. At least I hope we are. Jen's cheeks dusted with pink, and she looked away, playing with one of her bangs nervously. Why yes we are. Oh my. Mio looked between them with amusement, while Go had a strangely protective look on his face. Yes. New friend. Issei quietly indulged in his social triumph before resuming his reassurance, stroking behind Kumo's ears. Now, she's a good person, Kumo. She has a pet too. Like me and you. She was just looking for it. Kumo's snarl gradually faded into a curious doggy hum, the more her master spoke. She got up and slowly circled around Go, and General. The two thought she was pouncing on the chance to attack again, so Jen hid further behind Go, and Go prepared to kick at it. Step back from the kid, jerkwad. Kumo's not going to do anything. How can you be so sure? Go, despite putting on a front, still remembered the ferocity and agility Kumo displayed earlier, while naturally being afraid of confrontations with any animal that could bite or scratch hard, and as such couldn't quite suppress the little shaky dance his half-backling knees did. Mio put a hand on her hip, tilting her head with light bemusement. I've fought that dog once. Believe me, I know when she's truly poised for an attack. Just let her sniff Jen-chan a bit, Papa Bear. TCH, I'm nobody's papa. But he complied and slowly stepped to the side, letting Kumo freely circle around Jen in a convergent spiral, decreasing the distance between them stride by stride until the dog was basically shoving her nose into Jen, sniffing every little scent on her. The dog considered the little girl that had put it to sleep with a strange spell, and its eyes glazed over with an inscrutable intellect. She was judging her. Say her name. She likes it when people call her by her name. Issei hushly told Jen. Hey Kumo? Jen reluctantly called to the dog, her lip curling up into a quivering smile. The dog's ears shot up, it tilted its head, and then without a second warning Kumo jumped on her hind legs, causing everyone to gasp, and began licking Jen's face. It wasn't the explosively affectionate or submissive lick she did with her master and his aunt, but it was nonetheless a sign of intimacy. Almost like she was apologizing for attacking her and simultaneously forgiving her for knocking her unconscious. Wait, stop if the height tickles, Kumo. Jen let out sputters of an awkward laugh while she stood frozen, as if in her entire life she had never been licked by a dog. Myo found the scene diminutively endearing and odd, while Issei was jumping up and down and celebrating. Yes, now Jen-chan and Kumo can be friends, and we can be the three musketeers of the Akashic Records. Together, we'll unveil the cosmic truths. He effectively bunny-hopped toward the two and hugged them both, joining in on the fun and making it almost like an initiation ritual to accept the timid girl into some secret society of adorable delusions. This is just too cute. Neo smiled and tilted her head. Akashic Records? Cosmic Truths? Kid went from spy cosplay to a Lovecraft novel protagonist. He can't even get his fantasies right. I told you to stop hitting me, woman. Go groaned as his negative raving was again cut off by a well-struck elbow blow. Myo side-eyed at him with an irked glare that softened into a chiding expression. Tisk, I'll stop when you get some love in that shriveled-up heart of yours. They're kids, let them enjoy life a little. PFT, whatever he said dismissively, yet inside, Go's heart throbbed. The words resonated with him, strangely enough. He too had a little niece who was as excitable and living in her own world, just like Issei. He sighed, muttering something about stupid kids and disgustingly adorable. Issei was holding the girl's hand, shaking it like a general congratulating a private for their promotion to a higher rank. Eano Ayasikunthus is a bit too much, Jen said, a clear line of red across her face, with a bit of steam coming off her. Nonsense. You've been accepted by my great sidekick. Roof. Kumo barked at him while still on her hind legs, front paws on Jen's left shoulder. She huffed in displeasure. Oh, oops, sorry, I meant you have been chosen by our Brotherhood of Templars to seek out and destroy evil together. From now on, We shall be known as so. His voice lost its theatrical intonation, trailing off as he looked around for things that could give him inspiration. His eyes landed on the half-moon shining in the twilight sky, and he blushed a little as it reminded him of Jen's own glistening silver hair, which was even cuter in the faint moonlight glow. He had it. The Trilunar Tribunal of Justice, Issei declared, pointing at the stars above like some protagonist from a shounen manga, proud and confident in his theatrics. Jen's blush increased tenfold, toying with a stray bang shyly for a bit before looking back at him with a gentle smile. Trilunar? MMH, I like it, Issei-kun. Roof. Kumo barked in approval, wagging her tail excitedly. Hee. Issei chuckled, rubbing his nose idly, but internally he was hyperventilating. This was the first time he had gotten a compliment from a girl his age. A girl that looked borderline inhuman with the levels of cuteness she could exude. Alright, you two love chicks, let's save the smooches for later. Yeah? Auntie! Both children gasped, sputtering over their own disbelief and complete discombobulation, as their faces turned fully red now. However, Mio, ever vigilant and precise, just cut straight to the point, though internally she awed at how cute their reactions were. We still got a search to go on. Think of it as the Trilunar Tribunal's first job. Yeah. Let's start our search, Jen-chan. With me, Auntie and Kumo by your side, we'll find that turtle of yours before you can even blink. Okay, and thank you all very much. I'm in your debt. Jen bowed, showing absolute gratitude towards their generosity, and blinked, remembering she forgot one more person, before bowing to him as well. And thank you too, Mr. Go. Your help is greatly appreciated, Huanfever. Go muttered, looking away and pretending to sink into one of the tree's shadows. Though his tone was still rude, the others could tell he was just pretending to not care at this point. Mio almost began teasing him, but held back, knowing it would just lead to more needless drama. And so, the five embarked on their search, continuing from Jen's previous suspicions and the leads. Issei offered to use Kumo's powerful nose to streamline the search, though Jen only had a little trinket that her turtle would often chew on which had a faint trace of its scent. The majestic dog nonetheless pulled through, leading them through one of the side paths down the northwest alleyway and into the clearing where the Amenominaki shrine stood. Kumo's tail began wagging wildly and she let out a bark, as if to say, that's where the trail leads. It's inside the shrine. Atta girl, Kumo. Issei praised his ethereal dog with a few scratches under the chin and a quick peck on her head, making the dogs wag even harder, having completed her assigned duty. He turned to Jen with a confident smile. Kumo's saying your turtle went through here and into the shrine. Is he a dog whisperer now? Go drawled out, earning a momentary glare from his companion. Despite their initial agreement, due to the kids literally becoming attached to the hip, Go and his present tormentor eventually began walking together, chatting occasionally. Your mouth really only knows how to ruin the moment, huh? Mio asked, her voice matching his drawl. I'm just saying. Well, yeah, I agree that it's weird, but that's kinda what makes it so beautiful. His bond with Kumo is so strong they can understand each other like they share one mind. That sounds like something a villain from our studio's anime would be able to do. She smacked him on the back of the head, which caused him to explosively cuss her out. Mio only chuckled. Getting reactions out of him seemed to have become a new hobby of hers. Does the trail lead to anywhere else or does it cut off here? Jen asked, looking at the shrine while tugging on her sleeves, anticipating clearly building up under her skin. Nah, Kumo's nose is better than even Batman's navigation thingamajinks. Which means your turtle is probably still in there, Jen-chan. Ooh, this is amazing. Thank you so much, Issei-kun and Keikume-kun. Her eyes sparked with joy, a tear nearly forming as her shoulders, which had a slight tense to them the entire time, now became fully relaxed, like the discovery of her turtle's location just let her breathe again. She rubbed her hand and awkwardly raised a fist. First victory for the Trilunar Tribunal of J Justice. Yeah, Roof. I don't understand, though, what would a turtle be doing in a shrine? Go asked, a look of puzzlement crossing his features as he came to a step in front of the steps. It's because Jen began explaining and stopped short, some internal debate written on her face, causing her voice to die down for a bit as she bit her lip and rubbed her forearm, but she eventually resumed with that familiar cute quiver. It's because many shrines have food offerings that also include citrus fruits. He loves those a lot, so he's often attracted to places of worship. Your turtle sounds more like a wild pig, Go said and reluctantly shifted his weary gaze to Mio, remembering her admittance to still managing it. Do you keep fresh fruits in there, like apples or persimmons? Mio put a hand on her chin and pondered. We do around big festivals, but the next one is still a good 3 weeks away from now. Besides, there's not really any food preservation technology in it, so if we leave anything but raw wheat it'd just rot and cause half the bugs in this park to infest the entire building. Doesn't Granny Saya leave her groceries there all the time? Issei asked, tilting his head. Issei, she's got dementia. The last time she came she thought the shrine was the bank and nearly gave me 30,000 yen to deposit to her grandson. Sheesh, I know I wouldn't be parting with that kind of money, even for my family. Go said, his eyes rolling with stinginess. Like any woman would be dumb enough to fall for and start a family with you. Mio spoke, nearly laughing in mockery of the sheer idea a man like him could have grandkids. Shut up. Plenty of women have wanted me. I'm just focused on my financial growth. The profit. Who are you to judge me like some marriage counselor? What man would want a rabid gorilla like you anyway, huh? Oh ho ho ho. I'll have you know I received the most amount of confessions in Kohai during my high school years. I'm a goddamn national treasure, hun. Hey, please don't start again. Jen stepped in to placate them but was stopped by Issei's hand on her shoulder. Her cheeks dusted with pink, and she looked trepidly over her shoulder to see Issei and Kumo shaking their heads in sync, silently telling her to just let them fight it out. They're not going to stop. Plus I yoinked the key to the sacred room inside the shrine, while Auntie Mio wasn't paying attention. Issei smirked like the trickster he could be sometimes, twirling the key once, throwing it in the air and snatching it. But Ayasiken, you stole again. Jen objected, only to lose her voice when the boy got shamelessly within nearly kissing distance of her, his breath on her lips. Nah, we're just speeding things along. He then lowered his voice to a tone that was almost husky. At least as husky as a 10-year-old boy's vocals could get when trying to emulate James Bond. Besides, I'll give it back. Now come, Comrade Jen, we shall find your lost companion. He grabbed her hand and dragged her along as he ran up the stairs to the shrine building, Kumo following parallel to them. By the time the two bickering adults below noticed they had sped off and began calling out to them, the trio parked in front of the gate. It was a double-layered one. A torii gate and a sakura tree lich gate with several ofuda placed haphazardly, numbering in nearly 100. Kumo barked excitedly. Her ears pointed and she dove down, nearly upturning the soil as she sniffed out the 1-foot gap distance of elevation between the lich gate and the ground. Hey, is your turtle large? Issei inquired. No, he's quite small actually. Small enough to fit through there? He pointed at the gap that Kumo was sniffing with supreme enthusiasm. A seeker on the prowl. Jen gasped, and for a second she was stunned. Why yes, it must have crawled there not too long ago, too. Your buddy's definitely inside. The two shared a bright smile and without waiting any further, Issei whipped out the keys, circled through the ring until he found the one for the outer gate. With a slight struggle he put it in and the gate mechanism clicked as it loosened, unlocked. All right, onwards, warriors of justice. Victory is upon us. Why yeah, roof. However, the instant the door was pushed open by a slight angle, just enough to let Jen get a peek of the courtyard of the Aminominaki shrine, something in the fountain flow that was the world seemed off. A cold silence washed over them, and Issei felt a chill run down his entire little body. His knees quivered despite himself and he looked around. He gasped, his 10-year-old brain not able to process the eerie pitch blackness that had overtaken the sky. It's true that night was encroaching earlier, but the darkness that permeated the entire sky above seemed eldritch alien wrong. And it wasn't just the scale, the whole world seemed devoid of colors now. Next to him, he heard Kumo growling and he moved his gaze to her. A gut feeling of underlying horror struck him when he saw just how on edge his dog was. Even when they walked around bad people like drunks and drug addicts, or when Jen had agitated her for some reason, Kumo had never looked this nerve-wracked. He could practically feel the fear, anxiety, and flight-fight instincts bubbling under her skin like electrostatic. In fact, there was some present electricity in the air, like the calm before the storm that only dogs and cats could sense. Issei, you little rascal, wait for me before running off, we talked about this. Seems he didn't learn jack from your scolding earlier. He's already back to his thieving ways. Oh, can it? The bickering voices of his aunt and Go Mamazono brought a fortunate sense of normalcy, as he saw them approach from the top few stone steps into the pathway that led to the shrine entrance. At first they beamed with their usual bravado, Go grumbling about everything and Yo putting the fear of God in him with her blizzard-like glares. There they are. Issei, Jen-chan, Kumo, wait for us before you run off like that, I can't be responsible for. He almost sighed. Almost believed it was just his brain playing tricks on him. But the moment they arrived near them, their expressions suddenly changed. What the hell? When did it get so dark? The sun set like 20 minutes ago tops. Mio was the first to utter a word about it, followed by Go's expected reaction. Oh my god, can't this day stop getting weirder every second? Did I die or get transported to limbo? Is that why I'm getting tormented by this She-Hulk? I'll show you a She-Hulk, you paper-thin piece of... She clenched a fist to strike, which caused him to pipe down and cover his face on instinct, not wanting another taste of the Mio nose-breaker. She exhaled and pinched her nose. Alright, maybe the oxygen has thinned up here. We're not on a mountain for it to be this thin, though. Go countered, trying to regain what little sense of composure he had left by frantically dusting off his Borsellino hat. Well, then I don't know, what's your explanation? If I had one, I would know well enough to stay away from this accursed place. Then why are you mouthing off to me, you dingus? Roof! 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 Suddenly Kumo exploded into the loudest and most virile and aggressive barks Issei had ever heard, displaying such sheer aggression that it even caused Mio's brow to crease in concern. It was like the dog became possessed by the spirit of violence. Issei stared at her for a moment, that muffled terror thumping in the back of his throat like someone slowly choking him out. He went to her and started rubbing and stroking her belly. Kumo, what's wrong, girl? What's up with you? Try as he might to project a level of confidence, as Mr. Ozawa had taught him to do in stressful situations, Issei couldn't help the little whimpery edge that invaded his voice, which only worsened as Kumo just seemed to get even more aggressive until her voice broke into a frail whine. He heard something slam into the gate, something really heavy, with enough mass to bend the whole structure. Then he heard his aunt and Go's reactions. No! What the is that? A second later he heard a wet squelch, like a watermelon being crushed, followed by trickling sounds like spilled liquid and something hot landing on his arms and face. He smelled it. Metallic-like, with a hint of humid coppery feel. He looked at himself and saw red. So much red it coated his hands in it. Blood. He gulped loud enough to reverberate through the scene, and time slowed down. Terror like nothing he had ever felt before began to rattle his body like a vibroslap, spit trailing down his mouth and his muscles so tense that if he had made a hastier movement, he would have snapped something. The world got cold, so unbelievably cold, like the hands of death reached out to brush their pale touch over his back, and his bones felt heavier than normal, as if he was suddenly made of rock. When he finally looked toward the source of the squelching sounds, all he could do was scream. There are no catastrophes that loom before us that cannot be avoided. A famous quote by a prolific Russian sci-fi author and maverick of the 20th century, whose books Akane Himejima would often read as a kid whenever one of her dear mamas or aunties wasn't there to attend to her. It was a window to the mid-20th century zeitgeist in relation to anthropocentrism and the belief that human beings inherently possess the ability to handle any obstacle or calamity, as long as they leaned on their foresight and a clearer head and an active body. A warning against the wait-and-see approach that so many pretentious intellectuals would apply. Akane couldn't help but resonate with the message now in the throes of a catastrophe she so rarely encountered during her tenure as a high overseer of the astral nexus. Time, though technically a foreign concept for her, was of the essence, and an idle mind did nothing but waste it. Iteration 1984. A timeline she was responsible for monitoring, tipped ever closer to a world collapse event, and she still possessed little to no knowledge of the situation as the entire freaking thing went dark after the initial collision impact. The storyline effectively went private, leaving her and the 20 Sentinel operatives of System C-44 in the dark. If it was a case of a clear-cut invasion from outside, Akane would have cut her losses and wiped the timeline clean, maybe establish a spatial anchor to one of the Eons to reset the world. But this was different. This was something that had too many X factors. And Akane hated uncertain variables. So, after organizing 2 more teams from System C-38 and B-15 to work together with C-44, Patricia's team, to establish a triangular workflow procedure and streamline the emergency response plan, Akane came to the conclusion that a direct interference from a higher-ranked operative was required in this case. But surprise, surprise, all the others were either busy sticking their thumbs up their bums or handling severities in other multiversal cosmologies. So, who was the only overseer of appropriate power and rank left to deal with this? Why, who else but the Lady of the Unattainable Noose, Akane herself? Even before the sequence of events that would lead to this decision being finalized, Akane already had formulated countermeasures in her head and strategies to spearhead a probe into the invaded world's plot. After all, the most secure way to learn what was going on behind the scenes was to become an actor in the play. To that end, Akane would need to meet a certain someone whom she, for various reasons, couldn't directly find by herself. Instead, she needed another certain someone to act as a proxy. And to find that proxy, she needed to meet him personally. She stepped out the Metaxic-Hilbert Tunnel Quantosinusoidal Resonant Beacon Point Anchor Probe, or as her subordinates and everyone else on the Astral Nexus so diligently abbreviated it to the Rick and Morty portal, as if they weren't already dealing with copyright issues no thanks to Aunt Ernestine popping in and out of the Nexus Axis Monday with references they couldn't possibly make. Sigh. Putting that disaster train of thought aside, the picosecond her feet touched down on a hollow-cracked black surface, she knew she had hit the jackpot. Below her was a vast expanse of what might have once been a variant of the dust ball the gravitationally restricted chordate mammals call their home Earth. The planet was now plastered over a ruined solar system, just a bunch of desolate rocks cluttered up like piles of trash. Everything solid lacked color, as if it had been drained from it, a strong indication of extreme photonic disruption. She looked further down the horizon. It was a snapshot of a bygone paradise for humanity, crushed and reduced under forces that the primates could never hope to understand even in 1 trillion years of dedicated research, like tiny fish in the maw of a blue whale. A picture her multidimensional gaze was all too familiar with, like creepy photos she had taken one too many times. An inverted city, twisted and elongated, rising up and down into a wild U-shape in the most absurd geodesic manifolds, a geometric fracturing that was not possible within 4-dimensional space unless a higher power intervened and threw every fundamental force and axiom into complete disarray. Electricity, winds, thermal forces all put in a blender of utter chaos like ingredients to the most horrid planetary smoothie. Frozen purple lightning shot forth from the ground in waves, gusts of winds moving backwards as if someone had hit the reverse button on the tape of causality, and orbs of heat that clamped up like sea foam. Streets and buildings stretched into filaments, spiraling out in rivets and losing themselves in the event horizon of a supermassive singularity that stood at the center of a dead universe, a single solid object in an infinite nothingness, no stars nor cosmic radiation, just a gallery of time fractures. It was like looking at a broken glass ceiling that was suspended right in the instant the glass shattered. And to call the singularity a black hole wouldn't be exactly accurate. The simplest English terminology Akane could use to label the concentric higher-dimensional ball of erosive energy in the folding skyline was the super daddy of Big Rip theory. Every dead world like this had one, acting as the focal anchor of local spacetime in it, both pulling apart the dead world and sewing it together. It was a decaying neshama, a result of a fractured last-ditch effort transmigration of souls and history into one last dying branch of the world in an attempt to salvage the timeline right before its destruction. However, when that threshold of inescapable destruction is crossed, the neshama becomes incapable of withstanding the higher-dimensional forces that bear down and crush it inward. The transmigration is severed mid-course. the living current of souls and history bent and folded back. This results in a necrotic branch that collapses under entropic forces and becomes this giant ball of echoing sorrow, despair, and broken records, all meshed together into a violent singularity. To lower dimensional beings, it was an intergalactic well of doom that would ensure the total erasure of everything. For the dwellers of the outer void in Citra Akra, like Akane herself, it was like an overheating engine. With the right technology or level of cosmic power, one could theoretically nourish themselves on this zombified Neshamat singularity. Quite the feast you've made for yourselves, huh, you mechanic sows? She internally bristled, commenting in her head about the revolting state of this world. Though it no longer upset her, seeing scenes like this never could stop the bile of disgust she felt towards the Astral Nexus' eternal enemies. The alien gods from outside the multiverse. The endless legion of the starless galaxy. Timelines were a film that never stopped entertaining in a beautiful panorama of different lives and experiences converging into one chaotic but astonishing mess. This world too was probably once a gallery of trifling gods, mortals and beasts. To see it crushed till it was a lifeless husk, disgust could be the only thing she could feel at that moment. I ran a quantum manifold mapping of this timeline cluster. There were quite a few indicators he is here, so I should be in the right world. Just finding his precise 3D coordinates is a little tougher, especially in a place where the third and fourth dimensions have become meshed potatoes. Oh well. She glanced at the vast expense of a Discordian infinity, her face showing no emotion outwardly, yet several bubbled beneath the surface. Morbid curiosity mixed with a hint of sadness and joy in her eyes, like a pathologist looking at a fine specimen to dissect. Rishima. Or a bubble universe. The lingering trace of the divine after the contraction of the infinite light. A fading memory of the true state of the universe before the Almighty Creator leaves. Fitting that it is also a term we, the Sentinel, and the Eons, use to label such worlds. Dead worlds, whose dimensional walls have been shattered, causality and effect crushed, and every single trace of life consumed. It's an 11-dimensional snapshot gallery. Faint traces of a world that had either fallen into the sea of iron or been devoured by the alien machines. If I had to use an allegory, I'd say they're like memories that persist even after the whole universe has been destroyed. The fossil of a dead cosmos. Like the light of a star that can still be observed from afar for many years. Despite the paradox of an erased world still existing, the energies of dying timelines would often leave behind faint traces that'd coalesce and slowly crystallize into a local order of spacetime. Their structure was as fragile as quantum particles and were under constant threat of collapsing. As a high overseer of the Astral Nexus and a sentinel, one of Akane's duties, besides monitoring the more stable, extant timelines, was to explore, probe and extract data from the Rishimat, plural of Rishima. But beyond that, it was also an opportunity to meet one of the trailblazers. Interdimensional vagabonds who hopped between worlds and battled against incomprehensible threats. Legendary figures like the Bloodreaver Sharona, the Sword Hunter Lien, the all-benevolent omnipotent sage Mithriya, and she heard a resounding boom echo across the twisted colorless landscape, followed by a large swirling pillar of light that sparkled with aggressive energies. Bioelectricity arcing off in rows before slamming back down into an intense secondary explosion. She smirked. Well, did I rub a bunny's leg today or what? My luck's been as precise as my calculations. Her intended target was found and she didn't even have to tap into her Laplacian demon eye nor her white box state transcendence field. Energy wasted was a win for the enemy, but energy reserved was the enemy's doom. Not that she often needed to worry about that. Her body could recalibrate and replenish energy so fast it surpassed the concept of energy shortage itself. Her advanced senses picked up on something through the temporal axis, a dangerous reverberation that made her shiver. The strange waveforms of absolute power that almost seemed to bend the world's visage under its own immeasurable weight. A singularity much deeper and more ravenous than even the supermassive universe-devouring black hole at the center of this Rishima. No, don't tell Messin of a Gaussian to the power of 3 U's. Why is it here? A prime class. Otherwise known by a name she uttered to her colleagues once, which she dared not even think of now. Not here, not when her calculations didn't account for it, and she didn't prepare in advance. To say the true nomenclature of these entities now was to court an oblivion that even she'd have a hard time escaping. Its gaze has been cast here, but why? You egregious gluttons almost never go after Rishamat, so what changed? Questions for another eternity. Occurrences that didn't fall under her supremely precise estimations were a greater rarity than a version of Earth where politicians weren't corrupt pigs. Though she could feel the foreign all-powerful observer from somewhere inside that supermassive singularity, she didn't feel that it was focused on anything in particular. She contemplated activating her Laplacian demon eye to gauge its strength, but if she stared at that abyss too long, the abyss would definitely start staring back at her. And she'd rather avoid facing a prime class without backup. It hasn't noticed me yet. That means it's not on a high alert mode. Okay, we still have a window of opportunity here. Being on a timer was not a concept she usually had to deal with, as a being who naturally existed outside of the space-time lattice, in the safe metacosmic confines of the astral nexus where she could sip her quanta cocolet and read her favorite Otome manhwas. Well, it wasn't like she hadn't been trained for situations like this. From birth she could comprehend how to deal with dangerous situations to the best of her capacity. This, however, means folding the space-time grid is a no-no and messing with the vector fields is just as risky. Which means, she breathed, a sigh that reverberated with existence, causing 18 dark wings to protrude from her back, manifesting as 18 crystallized kaleidoscopes. The wings spread further out till they were attached to her back by a data link. The wings themselves, although reminiscent of the species her mothers were originally part of fallen angels, radiated a much greater wave of power and a supremacy that even the God of the Bible would fear. And instead of feathers, it was like folds of the night sky, and digital data had been meshed into something that resembles raven wings. We're traveling as my primitive grandmother did. Akane flapped her strange cosmic raven wings once and took off, flying past fractals, avoiding hollow dipole fields and surpassing the ever-impossible grid of the Rishimu, where time and space were thrown into a salsa of irregularity and absurdity, where even traveling at light speed could not get you from point A to B. So she went faster, so fast she surpassed the bending of fractured time and arrived at her destination before the moment she took off. She looked up, and despite her unnatural ability to keep her emotions in check, she couldn't help the jolly smile that graced her cute features. Like a kid seeing that one cool relative they hadn't met in a long time. Well, not that he was a relative in blood or family relation, but he had effectively been her babysitter at one point. She felt a natural attachment to the man. The man, dark, tall and brooding, olive skin glistening with sweat as he stood at the center of a gulf of death, destruction and ferocity, where one would go only if they courted death with a burning desire to meet a most gruesome end. And there was no shortage of volunteers. Clank! Clank! Ching! Metal meeting metal, reality screeching as space-rending blades and astro-shattering blasts met and caused intense reverberations across an area roughly the size of India. A clash of many against one, who stood like an unbreakable pillar. Akane almost jumped up in excitement, an electric shiver running down her body and an almost heroic worship flaring up in her eyes. It was like when a fan sees one of their heroes up close, they can't help but see them in a dazzling light. It was a rare sight for a natural-born sentinel like her, to watch a trailblazer so close, going in guns blazing. By my estimate, I should have a 10 earthen minutes window of opportunity to do nothing, meaning she had the chance to enjoy the show for a bit. Her eyes glowed in hyperchromic hues, a pulse of unnatural electricity passing through and coalescing into buttery popcorn that popped into existence. She sat down on the verge of the countrywide crater where the battle raged on. The man, her target, stood at the very epicenter of this crater. Posture balanced and relaxed, his meridian aligned perfectly, the sign of a true warrior who's been hardened through ages of battles. Across from him, in every direction, rows upon rows of slain enemies, their bodies slashed or riddled with bullets to a point where even regeneration could not keep them going. Beyond the fields of the fallen, stood their still functional brethren, biomechanic abominations and beasts of crystallized primeval Discordian energies, whose form and physiology didn't follow the laws of any world, encoding themselves from an outside source like malware bits onto a software system. Their outer shell had a lining of crackling space, tiny fractures as if even this dying world was rejecting their presence here. They came in various shapes, sizes and forms, modules Akane had analyzed to death and understood inside out. She saw slashers, brawlers, armillaries, quite a few centaur commanders, as well. Akane counted about 8,645 total units that remained intact, though there were probably a few thousand more the man had just cut down before she arrived. I sense nothing stronger than a commander class. I don't need to interfere. And knowing that guy, this is going to be quite the warm-up. It was as if everything was frozen in a single frame, and Akane worried she might have hyper-accelerated her perception to levels where any action they take would be seen as an eternity for her. However, that was not the case. The man and the legion facing him were simply locked in an evaluation process. A wait to seize the vanguard of the moment. The moment came in the form of a stray dead leaf from a rotten tree, falling down slowly and landing on a puddle of some goat-abhorred purplish substance. The instant the first ripple from the leaf's falls spread across the puddle, the attack began. One of the weaker entities, a slasher type, jumped high in the air, blade arms shining with dangerous light. Bam! It never landed, its cranial apparatus eviscerated by a precise shot. The others narrowed their optical sensory modules. In his left hand, gloved fingers grasped the wooden handle of a customized revolver handgun, Magnum 44. War Child. One of his go-to ranged weapons. Not impressive aesthetically, though it does possess a case-hardened finish with a 10-inch barrel, making it more efficient than most of its kind. The true kicker is the sixth A's shot. Four more biomechanical fiends jumped or flew down, each vaguely resembling an animal, or a chimeric mix of a few. Their physical attributes scarcely made a difference. Second shot. Second one down. Third shot. The third mechanical being's skull split apart in the middle. Fourth shot. The fourth one lost its optics and crashed into 10 other entities. Fifth shot. The fifth resounded across the area with a distorted gurgle as the supernatural bullet tore through its bio-cybernized insides. A sixth entity came in, bulkier and faster than the last 5, carrying a strangely shaped warhammer with a glowing core of quanta energy, which had the residual power from its fallen allies, empowering it and causing it to grow significantly till it towered over the rest with a height of 15 meters. It raised the glowing hammer high, enough potential energy stored in it to smash a city to pieces. But the man simply lowered his head as if noticing a coin on the ground, a gesture meant to almost mock the beast's attack. Right as the hammer of doom came down to turn him into a two-dimensional stain, a myriad of light spears, each glowing with intense golden radiance, manifested into reality, stacking by the dozen until there was a spinning umbrella made of hundreds of light spears. The mechanical behemoth's body clicked and screeched with obvious effort, straining its turning joints as it struggled with all its might to crush the light spear umbrella, yet it did not budge. No, quite the opposite. The man's ever-growing number of light spear stacks started pushing the thing back. The man simply coughed, and the light spears converged into a singularity before exploding, violently shredding space and the glowing hammer along with them. The behemoth stumbled forward from the lost leverage of the hammer's weight, and the man spun War Child and fired right as the barrel faced the behemoth's head. The bullet glowed so bright it was like a comet until it collided with the giant's robotic skull and exploded into a bright flash that reduced it to a half-torn/melted torso, which promptly crashed into the ground after a second's delay. Boom, jackpot! Ha! The deadly sixth shot, where the man would store a large amount of holy power and release it as a miniature bomb. The deadliness came from the precision and combination of a bullet's penetration with a bomb's dispersive power. It was a skill the man had fashioned specifically to destroy big, hulking brutes like this. Ordragons that needed a good shot to the head to stay down. After the hulking monstrosity fell, the man's enemies abandoned all pretense of caution and chose the blunt certainty of overwhelming force. They surged in from every direction, weapons humming and glowing at frequencies that did not belong to reality itself. Behind the advancing line, ranged units and support cadres activated their designated protocols. Cannons roared to life. Paracausal rockets shrieked through fractured air. Fields of otherworldly energy unfurled across the battlefield, cascading over the frontline fighters and layering them in overlapping shields of luminous force. The army moved as one unit, with one purpose and one strategy. The man had an unreadable expression, only tilting his head a little as if to say, "But that's also why you clowns are so predictable." He threw his hand up, summoning some kind of contraption, a heavy weaponry, a gorgeous, god-forged mix of a ballista and a railgun, spliced together with the force of a hurricane and the most precious gems in Svartalfheim. "The sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light." Akane's attention immediately perked, and she observed more vigilantly, a popcorn falling off her lips as she was ready to munch it down. "Is he? No way, that's so cool. I've never seen him do that before." The dust gathered like an unwitting audience, swept up into a siphon that soon formed into dark thick clouds, heavy with crackling power inside. "Sayara!" The clouds expanded further out, exploding into a gaseous giant of turbulent rage, a storm with the convective wind force and buoyancy of a typhoon that could annihilate an island in mere minutes. The storm roared and the world blinked with a volley of golden flashes, so radiant their collective shine could have been mistaken for a new star being born if observed from the other side of this broken earth. The lightning strikes, further enhanced by the man's nine-ending holy power and the Reniche ballista whose energy proliferated into the dark storm, colliding with the supernatural electric field and intensifying its charge and potency by a factor of millions. Romagler. The clarion of the polar peaks. The belcher of thunderbolt. Inscribed with the runes that call on the might of the thunderstorm and fitted with antler material from one of the 4 stags of the Yggdrasil. Its firing rate and armatures are pathetically basic to me, but they still pack a mean punch. I figured he'd resort to it, since its light-speed electric barrage is efficient against armor types, but to combine it with a miracle for a doubly explosive effect offset my predictions by a margin. He's so freaking cold. Akane ate her popcorn even more enthusiastically, her usually cold and dispassionate eyes sparkling with wonder, looking more the child her physical form should suggest she is. The astral nexus did have something akin to TV series and observatories, but watching the real stuff from up close was a trillion times better. The army of biomechanical monstrosities groaned and crackled as the divine storm tore through their ranks. Wave after wave went dark, lightning spearing their cores and processors, punching through the triple-layered Discordian energy fields and frying them from the inside out. Backline support units spasmed and dropped into temporary shutdown, while artillery platforms toppled from their perchesum, discharging blindly into the ground as they fell, annihilating themselves and a dozen nearby constructs in the process. The vast organism that had moved as one now collapsed like a sandcastle struck by a rising tide, dissolving into thousands of scattered fragments. Farther back, the units that had kept their distance and the commanders directing them watched the anomalous storm with cold, analytical focus. One step forward, a chimeric construct of polished metal and exposed circuitry, welded into a shape that vaguely resembled a humanoid cockroach. It drove a sleek, futuristic rod into the ground. An electromagnetic pulse detonated outward, then inverted. Instead of dispersing, it manifested at the storm's heart, converging inward upon the belcher of thunderbolt. The weapon shuddered violently. Its golden brilliance strained to a pallid blue, and the runes etched along its length darkened, twisting into harsher, more chaotic forms. The man looked up with curiosity that turned into horror as his weapon was turned on him, firing lightning at light speed, forcing the man to buckle down and encase himself in the quadruple-layered holy barrier. The man grit his teeth, as though his immense reserves of holy power could withstand the onslaught. The constant barrages of photonic shattering lightning propagated cracks throughout his barrier. Akane looked on in silence, analyzing the situation. A flux flow hijacking. You don't see that every day. Meaning that thing is probably a reality hijacker type. It's weak as tofu physically, but its ability to mess with the energy flow of other beings is pretty scary for a mere commander class, that is. The man's feet dug further into the blackened earth, his barrier on the verge of cracking. The entities, who felt that the opponent was compromised regardless, felt confident in dashing forth to further ensure his demise. However, this caused a contradiction in the ranks, as to preserve the troops, the reality hijacker type was forced to reduce the output of the belcher of thunderbolt. The man's struggling expression turned into a snide smirk, as if to say, "I got you." He turned off his barrier, and the ground exploded with a rapture as the remaining lightning bolts razed it with obscene force. However, the man was gone, and by the time the enemies followed his movements, he was halfway carving a canyon of bodies, wielding twin swords in both hands while firing a line of light spears that created a sort of racetrack leading directly towards. The reality hijacker sent an alarmed beep towards the heavier units, but they were too slow to act, the speed of the signal not matching the ferocity with which the warrior spun wildly like a Beyblade of doom, landing with a squelch mixed with a tearing sound on the reality hijacker, as one of his blades firmly latched into the thing's alien skull. Guwawawa! The reality hijacker let out a scream through an artificial vocal module, the searing hot passion of the man's killing intent seeping into his sword in the form of holy flames, his control over his angelic core so precise he could manifest his holy power in the form of a holy element. The holy flame melted through the thing's internal biocircuitry and synthesized tissue. Anagaririo, go to Mashiki. The man growled as his hands became a blur, and a second later the reality hijacker was cut into fine slices like sushi. Before the man spun once again, his muscles bulging from his tight shirt as his breathing pattern changed. Hinogami Kagura, Shiranui. The man shot past the falling pieces and incinerated them out of existence before it could regenerate with a single flame-coated slash. Akane's eyes exploded with giddy excitement. Oh, a Furid technique followed by one of my family's arts. Now that's a world-class warrior for you. Due to his insane velocity, the drag force itself failed to keep up with him, letting him whiz past hundreds of the entities, his movements like a fire dancer's who has practiced the moves enough times to do them without thinking. Left swing, right swing, his hands spinning and slashing like tornadoes as he cut down hundreds of the biomechanical entities. NGH. Before his feet could touch the ground, a crushing force slammed into him from the side. Horns punched through the skin of his chest and bicep as a bison-like juggernaut barreled into him, its endoskeleton and massive joints humming as it leveraged its colossal frame and Herculean strength. He was sent rocketing across the battlefield toward a jagged outcropping that would have skewered him outright had he not recovered midair. Twisting sharply, he flipped himself upright and unfurled his fallen angel wings. Though their coloration followed the common hues of their kind, and their aura seemed like that of a termite beside Akane's blazing presence, they carried a mystifying majesty one rivaled only by the ancient Governor-General of the Grigori. The man shot upward just in time to avoid another bison-like construct hurtling toward him, then another, and another. It became an apocalyptic bullfight in the sky, except these bulls were engines of incomparable destruction, their hooves fitted with jet propulsors that let them carve impossible curves through the air. Even so, he outmatched them in aerial maneuverability. He wove between the charging biomechanical titans, evading by inches, waiting for the moment their trajectories aligned. His wings flared wide, catching drag, then snapped inward. Riding the gathered pressure, he launched himself straight at them. Hinogami Kagura, Shigetsu. His blade flashed in twin arcs, like the jaws of a raging tiger snapping shut. The slashes carved a vacuum through the construct's midsections. A heartbeat later, holy fire followed the cut, and the bisons detonated from within. He descended and skidded across the ground, posture settling into perfect balance. The counterattack came instantly. He tossed his sword skyward and leapt as a storm of blades erupted beneath him. Twisting midair, he began to spin, unleashing holy bullet after holy bullet in a relentless cascade. The barrage did not narrow, it expanded, spreading outward like a widening halo of annihilation. They fell in sequence. 12. 24. 48. By the time the count reached 100, the falling blades had descended low enough for him to snatch them from the air. With both weapons reclaimed, he unleashed a series of omnidirectional slashes that erased 3 more advancing waves and bursts of searing light. Then the aerial units arrived. Bird-like drones screamed overhead at near-relativistic speeds, mounted Gatling guns blazing as they circled him in tightening spirals. At the last instant, he substituted himself with a clone of condensed holy energy. The real warrior reappeared atop one of the drones, driving his blade into its neck joint. Seizing control of its mounted weapon, he turned it against its own formation, shredding several from the sky. The survivors shrieked like metallic pterodactyls, only to be answered by descending spears of radiant light. They manifested above each drone in perfect alignment. They fell. Each spear pierced clean through its target, and then exploded, reducing the machines to burning fragments that rained to the battlefield below. The warrior barely deflected a beam-like attack that vibrated with abnormal frequency, a Discordian symphony that worked to bring down the cosmos. 3 of the commanders jumped in the air and slammed their weapons down on him. An energy axe, quantum blade and a scythe. The commanders were hulking monstrosities, their frames ever shifting and their optics blinking as they adapted to the man's power and fighting style. All the while, their minions continued attacking in droves from all sides. The man ate in a breath as his muscles strained against the heavy blows of the commanders, while his body was continuously grazed by the smaller enemies. Though from an outsider's perspective, the situation might have looked hopeless, Akane could only smile in anticipation. Ah, that's why the lower caste soldiers are so fun to bully. How long till they realize this is just another ruse? The man's expression, which gave off nothing but the feel of strain and effort a moment ago, morphed into a sardonic smirk as he flipped, rapid-firing Warchild to temporarily leave the commanders with damaged sights and propelling himself a kilometer into the air, where he had a nice, bird's-eye view of the army of thousands and their commanders. An army that had ganged up on him, and now stood clamped together like a useless mass. Time to end it, the man uttered his first words, his voice gravelly, and carrying an edge that promised inescapable finality to his foes. He swung his left hand and a golden trail followed that crystallized into a bow. The bow shone with the brilliance of a star, its design intricate and gorgeous with molten gold that retained its form despite its liquidity. He outstretched his right hand and lightning struck his palm, but instead of searing it, the electric charge focused and condensed into a peculiar blade that shimmered with immense power. The power of a heavenly king. Upon sensing the frequencies, Akane immediately discerned the nature and identity of these artifacts, her expression revealing the slightest hint of shock before it fell into a look of pristine amusement. So he had those in his arsenal? The bow of Apollo and Indra's Vajra. Interesting, that's not something the astral data vaults have recorded. Must be a new addition to his arsenal. You never cease to amaze me, uncle. Now show me how the thunder roars. The man knocked the Vajra's end onto the translucent stellar bowstring of Apollo's bow, pulling as far back as he could, the veins of his biceps practically throbbing with fury under the skin as he accumulated as much potential force as possible. The fire of the sun collided with the lightning sparks of the Vajra, overlaying it with a kind of flaming lightning arrow that danced in his hand with anticipation. Indra's sun-destroying arrow. The man roared as he unleashed the divine arrow of ravishing destruction, the concentration of energies falling down like a comet that promised the enemy's extinction. The commanders and their minions attempted to put up a last resistance, firing their own concentrated beams of Discordian energies, but compared to the descending power of 2 mighty gods coupled with the man's own immense holy energy, their attacks might as well have been fireworks trying to halt a nuclear blast, only slowing the arrow a little before it fell down on them with a force potent enough to silence a star and exploding in a world-consuming flash. When the cacophony of noise and brightness concluded, the country-sized crater had quadrupled in diameter, only limiting its destruction to the size of a France-like country due to the man's precise control over his own energies. The man looked on in solemn silence. The enemies had been wiped out, down to the last number. Not a trace of them had been left behind. After what felt like a silent eternity, his body untensed and he slowly descended on the ground, collapsing on one knee, his breathing uneven. Huff huff. Using power borrowed from 2 high-ranking divinities ensured the total annihilation of entire armies. But it came with a great cost, lashing back at his body with an almost equal force that did a number on his stamina. But when things appeared peaceful, he felt the ground rumble, like an earthquake threatening to split the already broken planet further apart. But this wasn't a geological occurrence. No, it was the effect of something insanely heavy crashing down. He looked back and he felt a tightening knot at the back of his throat. Gigantic wasn't even a word that could do justice to the living mountains that fell down from the sky, like dark raindrops that shook the broken earth and nearly threw him off balance. They were absolutely gargantuan, standing hundreds of miles away from him, yet he still had to crane his neck to look up at them. And there were 7 of them, each one exuding an aura that dwarfed the entire army of enemies he had been facing. "Damn, guess they're done playing around and sending in the big boys," the man said out loud, his voice laced with a kind of exhausted sarcasm that hid his actual anxiety well. Though he had faced worse odds, without Indra's sun-destroying arrow, even defeating one of these mountain-like colossuses would wear him down. Best case scenario, he spent days hacking at them until they fell. Worst case scenario, no, there was no worst case scenario. He'd break the tides of causality again and force his way forward, as he had done hundreds of times already. His shoulders tensed, hands itching to summon his long-gone beloved's prized sword, his ace in the hole that had gotten him out of many tight spots before. "Well, Vaya, I hope you're ready for a long dance. 10 minutes have passed. This was fun, but it's time to end the show." A girl's voice reverberated from everywhere, echoing from every twisted crevice of the land, and the hairs on the man's arms stood up like a cat's. He turned and saw her pass him in silence, levitating, crowned in an aura so absolute that the only image his mind could summon was the dragon of infinity. She flickered in and out and was surrounded by an odd deep bluish aura, her power extending out in massive waves like the spiral arms of the Milky Way, and for a moment the man swore he saw an infinite expanse of a kind of computerized boundless field, like a universe functioning as an autonomous being. Clap! Her hands came together in a resounding smack. Doubt as heavy as a supernova, as an immeasurable charge of power was released in an omnipresent pulse that froze everything, the entire broken world, covering it in a kind of digitalized effect. Everything except the man himself, whose mouth gaped a bit in shock. He saw them, the mountainous behemoths from the other side of this piece of the shattered earth, now rigid as if someone had turned them off. A few trembled and vibrated slightly, the faintest sign of resistance, but against the tiny goddess power, they remained locked like flies on a web. The girl chuckled, extending one hand forward as if to grasp the faraway titans in her palm, and the world itself responded, manifesting a sapphire digital hand of zeros and ones crystallized into a gigantic lattice of energy. The girl's hand clenched into a fist, and the digital higher dimensional hand clasped the titans, the zeros and ones breaking apart and fusing back into cerulean sparks of light, right at the centers of these mechanical behemoths before. Snap! Exploding like septuplet supernovas, breaking down the titans into baser material and wiping them clean off the face of this broken earth. The girl giggled about the matter, as if she had just toppled over a rival's Lego set, and dusted her hands off casually. The warrior stood in complete silence, his body feeling the cosmic tremors from the Titan's destruction even from afar, and gulping, uncertain if what he was facing was a threat. His instincts flared up as he sensed the tiny goddess moving until she turned around and his eyes went wide in recognition. "You are!" Akane smiled, reeling her real power back in and mirthfully tiptoeing through the air toward the man. She had been eager to reveal herself to him all this time. But the heroine had to make a grand entrance. "Hey, Uncle Purge," she said. "Let's catch up, shall we?" That's the end. Thanks for listening.